Good evening. Good evening. Welcome to the November 29th. It is. My light's on. Are you ready? We ready? Okay. Good evening. Welcome to the November 29th, 2006 meeting of the Traffic and Transportation Advisory Commission for the City of Thousand Oaks. My light is on.
There's no amplifier.
Okay.
Talk louder.
I'm a very soft-spoken person. I can't do that. So,
Very quiet. Try just
all right.
close to it and see.
Are you? Hello? Can you hear this one? No.
The speaker's not on.
Okay. Well, I guess you'll just have to be real quiet, okay? And we'll just do our best. It's going through TOTV. So if you all want to go into the room next door where you can watch it on TV and you can hear, you can do that. Okay. Will you please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Would you call the roll, please?
Chair McMahon,
Here.
Commissioner Lemo,
Here.
Commissioner McDonald,
Here.
Commissioner McMahon. I'm sorry, McKay.
Here.
And Vice Chair Morris is absent tonight.
Thank you. Any person who wishes to speak regarding an item on the agenda or on a subject within the city's jurisdiction during the public comments portion of the agenda must file a public speaker card. I think you've all seen the purple cards with the recording secretary before that portion of the agenda is called. Any person who wishes to speak on a specific agenda item must file a public speaker card before the specific item is called. Persons addressing the Traffic Commission are requested to state their name and city of residence for the record. Under state law, issues presented or introduced under public comments can have no action and will be referred to the Traffic Engineering Division Manager for administrative action or scheduled on a subsequent agenda. Any person who wishes to speak on an agenda item or public hearing must file a speaker card with the recording secretary before the item or hearing is called. So you've all seen the purple cards and the blue cards? Okay. We are going to welcome a new commissioner. Mr. Joel Price. Oh, sorry.
Good evening. My name is Christine Artiaga. I'm with the City Clerk's Office. I'll be swearing in Mr. Price this evening. Mr. Price, I'll be reading the oath. If you agree after I read it, please state I do. If I could have you raise your right hand, please. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that you will support and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that you will bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California, that you take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, and that you will well and faithfully discharge the duties about which you are about to enter?
I do.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay, well, welcome.
Well, thank you.
It's nice to have you. Okay, at this time, we have public comments. It's not the general agenda item, it's the public comments item. And you will have 3 minutes. There are lights at the podium. Please watch the lights because I'm a nice person. I don't like to cut you off and stop you. So the yellow light means your time is ending and the red light means it's done. Okay? So the first speaker is Richard Kuntz, and after Richard will be Louis Worth. Excuse me, Louis Worth.
Good evening. Nothing like being first. My name is Richard Kuntz. I'm a small business owner and resident of Thousand Oaks for 17 years. I'm commenting tonight on Lynn Road. And basically, I'm not going to run up against the time here, but I wanted to say that we're all aware of the problem that we have with Lynn Road, and we know the issues concerning the safety and the noise and pollution involved with the daily traffic volume on that road. We all have many possible solutions, but I'd like to focus on one for a moment. Additional stoplights on Lynn Road, preferably at Lotus and Cali Laredo. It's been said that putting more stoplights on Lynn Road will only worsen an ever-increasing traffic congestion problem, therefore it would serve no common good. I had a sidebar conversation with one of our city council members not too long ago, earlier this month, and he had some interesting things to say about this issue, and that's what prompted this particular writing. Some suggest that we should put together a list of possible solutions, along with pros and cons, which is one of the main purposes of the ad hoc committee that was developed some time ago, and discuss those solutions and try and put a good match and fit together. When I talked with this council member, he made a suggestion at that point in time about the traffic light issue, and he said something that it stuck in my head, and I didn't really have an opportunity to gel on it at that particular moment, but it hit me a couple of days later. And basically, after some thought, I have to say one thing about additional lights on Lynn. Great, let's put them in. Let's put them in, synchronize them, and get some law enforcement out there, okay? The more congestion on Lynn Road, the less willing commuters from other cities that surround Thousand Oaks will be to take it on a daily basis. That'll put the commuters back on the freeway where they belong. And the same can be said for heavy commercial truck traffic. Truckers get paid to move, not sit in traffic. If Lynn Road is a disadvantageous route, then perhaps they'll flow back to the freeway. Signal light synchronization and additional signals in key locations could go a long way towards increased safety along this route. I've been a resident here for 8 years. I've seen and heard a lot. And the thing that concerns me the most is with all of the studies, the incidents that are not recorded because they don't happen at major traffic intersections. I think a lot of people don't know how many solo accidents occurred along certain sections of Lynn Road that nobody ever knows about. It is a safety problem, it's a noise issue, as everybody knows, and by God, it is an environmental issue with the pollution for the residents that reside in this community. Thank you.
Thank you. Lou Worth, please.
Good evening. My name is Louis Worth. I'm a member of the North Lynn Road Community Association, and I was the chairman of the City Council Ad Hoc Committee on Lynn Road. And I'm going to read my speech because I want to make sure I say it the way I want to say it. I want to speak with you now about one issue: the designation of Lynn Road from Hillcrest to Starfire as a truck route, which authorizes heavy trucks to use that part of Lynn Road. We are asking for unnecessary trucks to be prohibited from using Lynn Road as a State Road 23 bypass by removing that designation. Local delivery and construction trucks are exceptions allowed by state law. You can't prevent them. There are 3 main reasons to prohibit heavy truck traffic. Number 1, safety. Heavy trucks, high speeds, pose an unnecessary traffic risk to residents. Number 2, they generate very high peak noise levels. And when you get one going past your house, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Number 3, there is no need for Lynn Road to be a truck route. That is a feeder to manufacturing and commercial centers. That's the purpose of a truck route. Since the area is completely residential and there's no industry or commerce to require heavy traffic, of course, with the exception of the hospital. And they would always be entitled to deliveries and so on. Heavy trucks contribute to the overall high noise levels. However, the main noise issue of truck traffic is not just about how much it adds to the overall traffic noise, it is much more about how loud each truck is as it passes by each of our houses. That's the issue, really. It is also about how much more dangerous each heavy truck is to car drivers, bicyclists, and pedestrians, especially our children. Trucks belong on State Road 23. We need to put them back on it, and we have the means to do it. It's available. The Traffic Division will state it is a complex issue and requires extra study. However, I quote their 2001 memo recommending truck route additions and deletions. That's when Lynn Road became a full truck route. It says, these revisions are administrative and routine in nature. Doesn't sound very complicated to me. Segments of 7 streets were subsequently undesignated by the City Council. So we want one street to be undesignated. If they can do it 4 years ago, they certainly ought to be able to do it now. I have the applicable laws with me, and my reading of them tells me the worst case scenario, the most that needs to be done by the city is to hold a public meeting and to allow public input. Well, I guess that's what we're doing right now, right? Guess it is. The Traffic Division has had this issue, as well as speed limits and traffic signals, on the table for 8 months, since the ad hoc committee started. I'm asking the Traffic Commission not to put this issue off any longer, but to include undesignating Lynn Road as a truck route as part of its recommendation today, please.
The red light's not working.
Sorry.
We're having a good time today. Okay, so that was the last public comment. Oh, we do have more? Okay. We have one. Do we have more after this? Okay. So we have 5. First would be Tula Kaluvas, and then after that, George Kaluvas. And please state your name and city of residence for the record.
Good evening, Tula Kaluvas. Am I supposed to stand here or here? The Lynn Road problem has been consuming me since I moved to my neighborhood in 1976, and I have communications expressing concern since 1982. As of lately, for 6 months, I devoted precious time, or maybe 8 months, as a member of the ad hoc Lynn Road Traffic Committee, trying to help find solutions and alleviate the problems. From the report presented to the Traffic Commission tonight, I feel that not only a lot of mistakes are presented as facts, and to that corrections were entered by our chairman, I also see in the end of the document a list of recommendations as recommended by the committee. Actually, these are the recommendations as presented by the staff, and their order of importance was disputed by us at the last meeting. The objection to the order of the staff recommendations is critical, because in solving the problem of speed, installing the lights needed for the appropriate intersections, and stopping the excessive truck trafficking, the order of recommendations given to you tonight puts the solutions farther away and just by time as to not lessen the speed, not install lights, and not stop the trucks. The Lynn Road speed problem is a real problem, and no reports or data will alter the situation. We're here tonight to tell you, surveys aside, we need to lower the speed on Lynn Road north of 101. Do you know that in Simi they call the Lynn Road the Thousand Oaks Turnpike? If a death occurs, and it is bound to happen, I have been warning the city for at least 6 years. Now and before that, with letters since 1984, the city will be held liable. The Lotus intersection is a disaster waiting to happen. We desperately need a traffic light which will allow us to cross safely. Every month we have at least 2 serious accidents in the location of Lynn and Lotus, at least from the reported records, because many accidents are unreported. My neighbors can attest to that. We object to more delays and bogus studies, whose only goal is to pull off solving the problem and lulling us to sleep. No more studies, No more diversions. Please take the initiative to take action tonight.
Thank you. Yes, Miss. Oh, okay.
I'd just like to ask if Mr. Worth and Mr. Calavas and Mrs. Calavas, because they are part of the ad hoc committee, will they be available for questions on their report for the remainder of the evening? I notice you're talking in public comments, but thank you.
Okay. I just wanted to make one quick announcement. For those of you who are standing, we are being broadcast on a TV in the room right behind us, and you can hear us. And so if you wanted to speak, you can come in and speak when it's time, but you don't have to stand. If you don't want to, you can just sit comfortably back there. It's up to you. Okay.
Calavas, Thousand Oaks. I'm a member of the ad hoc committee, and I'm today here to thank, first of all, Mr. Halliwell and Mr. Machiko for the appendix to the letter that they submitted. That appendix has a wealth of data that if you carefully evaluate it, you see the problems that we have. The attachment to the letter that is labeled as recommendations of the ad hoc committee, they are not recommendations of the ad hoc committee, it's the recommendations that they came from the traffic department. We have never agreed upon those elements. The items have been discussed, but the process has not been defined as it has been defined in the document that Mr. Machiko and Mr. Halliwell put together. I'm here today for some basic things, but we will discuss it, I think, in more details later in the subject. But I want you to go to page 19 of the report, where the basic law, speed limit law, is defined. And the basic speed limit is defined as in the section 22350 of the Vehicle Code provides that no person shall drive a vehicle upon a highway at a speed greater than a reasonable or prudent, having due regard for weather, visibility, traffic, and the surface and width of the highway. And that "and" is omitted from the discussions that they're represented by other people. And in no event at a speed at which endangers the safety of the persons or property. And these two things occur frequently on the Lynn Road section of the road that we're discussing today. Frequently. And we'll come back again later on that. And also, it says that the prima facie speed limit are preempted by the basic speed limit law when the conditions in Vehicle Code section 22350 are met, and we meet these requirements. And therefore, we have to take care of it, to reduce the speed, to install lights, and to get in a civilized place. And thank you very much.
Thank you. Deanna Rain, and I'm sorry if I'm not saying your name correctly. And after that, Cheryl Hendrickson.
Hi, my name is Deanna Rain. I live in the Racket Club Villas on Lynn Road and between Hillcrest and Calle Laredo. Just want to reiterate some of the things that have already been mentioned that we've been continuing to discuss. And reviewing the recommendations here, things that are mentioned here as the gentleman was just referring to in regard to speed limit laws and how The city is unable to make any changes because we would not be in compliance with state regulations, et cetera. I find it very difficult to believe. I mean, how do we determine what is reasonable and prudent speed? You know, the people that live there on a daily basis can see how absolutely ridiculously fast that people drive. You know, it may be posted as 45 miles per hour. You may put little machines out there that measure the speed of traffic on a regular basis, but if you're doing it during peak hours of traffic, of course they're going to be slower and come into that 85th percentile. But majority of the time, it is really, really, really very dangerous there. I don't understand why we would not be able to make some kind of appeal or recommendation that we can make the necessary changes. As I said, it's very dangerous. Therefore, I'm not able to ride my bicycle or walk along Lynn Road because of that. And like another woman mentioned earlier, too, I would hate to see a death have to occur for somebody to really literally take some kind of action on this topic. At Calle Laredo and Lynn Road, there are many accidents there as well. We have a neighbor right now who's in the process of replacing the wall on her property there. She's had to do it several times. It just seems like there should be no need for this kind of, problem. Anyway, thank you.
I'm going to make a quick comment here because there may be some other people like this speaker who hasn't heard about the Goulet ruling. It went all the way to the Supreme Court. Someone got ticketed. Someone got ticketed. Can we use the portable mic? Is that possible? Okay. The city does regular monitoring of the speeds that are at every street. And those monitorings, those findings are a study that the courts use all the time. And whatever speeds the drivers are driving, the courts will take 85% of those speeds as what a reasonable and prudent driver will drive. And if a police officer goes to a court after having given a ticket to someone and the speed limit is lower than that 85th percentile, and I know I'm not explaining this very well, maybe we'll try it again later, but the court will throw out the ticket. So our police officers will not even write tickets in these areas if the speed limits are lower than what the findings on these surveys show as the 85th percentile, because it's a waste of their time to go to court and have them thrown out. And that's what that whole 85th percentile is. Okay, so let's move on, and maybe after our speakers we can have our resident police officer explain it in more factual terms, but that's the general idea before we have any more speakers. No, we're not having a conversation. Please sit down. We're not having a conversation. Please sit down. Cheryl Hendrickson? Okay. Howard Weisenfeld?
Good evening, Commissioners, and especially the new Commissioner Price and staff. Thanks for the time. I know the main purpose of this meeting this evening is the Lynn Road Ad Hoc Committee report, which I support after looking at it and hope that something will actually come of it and be done. Just say, Cisco food trucks, Budweiser beer trucks, Coke and Pepsi trucks, Jack Daniel alcohol trucks, Challenge Dairy trucks, Mission Linen trucks, FedEx and UPS trucks, and all other types of construction and delivery trucks. A large volume of cars, large loud SUVs and pickup trucks with loud engines that are souped up, that many times speed up and down the road at over 50 miles an hour, which increases the sound levels. Very little police enforcement over the speed limits, since understandably they can't be there 24/7. And also with the Goulet decision makes it tougher. And vehicles many times going through intersections when they're supposed to stop. A number of serious injuries and a recent unfortunate fatality. Oh, by the way, I'm not speaking about Lynn Road. I'm speaking about actually a two-lane residential frontage street in a residential neighborhood with no commercial businesses off of Westlake Boulevard, freeway as I call it, called Valley Spring Drive, which is where I live. While there are a number of issues that need to be seriously addressed on Lynn Road, and I concur completely, Valley Spring is worse in many ways in the respect that it doesn't deserve to be used in the manner that it is. It is a residential street with homes fronting it, with no sidewalks, with people who live there with children. And this goes on daily. Cars are clocked going at over 50 miles an hour in front of our homes. And nobody's able to stop them practically. It needs further attention along with Westlake Boulevard, which actually, per the report, has a higher traffic volume than does Lynn Road, interestingly enough, because of the cut-through traffic to use the 23 to go from the 101 to bypass the intersection going north on the 23. And I believe it actually has had more fatal accidents. I don't know how many Lynn has had, but we've had a number on Westlake Boulevard in the recent past, actually including my friend and neighbor and the former traffic commissioner, Glenn Garvin, who was just killed recently, as you might have heard. I would hope that you can establish or consider establishing an actual ad hoc committee, which like was done with Lynn Road, for us on Westlake Boulevard and Valley Spring, and hopefully we can get an end to this unnecessary situation. You've heard me before, but hopefully I think some of these things that connect Lynn Road to Valley Spring show that for a small residential street, we don't deserve to have what's going on there. We need some changes done. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay. At this point, it is item number 6, our summary notes of October 18th, 2006. Are there any comments or questions on those? No? Okay. And number 7 is the engineer's report for Lynn Road Ad Hoc Committee Traffic Calming Recommendations. Did you want to say something? Yeah. Commissioner McDonald?
Yes, at this time I'm going to have to recuse myself. This is working, as I'm a resident in the area and served on the ad hoc committee. So with that, I will leave.
Thank you. Mr. Mashiko?
Yes, thank you, Chair McMahon. This item is a recommendation by the Lynn Road Ad Hoc Committee to adopt the proposed action plan on Exhibit A in our staff report, which addresses concerns related to speeding, truck noise, intersection access, and pedestrian issues along Lynn Road, Olson Road between 101 freeway and the 23 freeway. The recommendation is to consider the engineering report that the commissioners have in front of them, receive the input tonight by the public, and decide on an improvement program as appropriate. Our recommendation is that the Traffic Commission recommend that the Lynn Road Action Plan developed by the ad hoc committee shown in attached Exhibit A be adopted by the City Council. The Traffic Commission does have the right, based on input received tonight, to accept Exhibit A as it is in the report. You may feel that it may need some changes based on testimony that's received, or maybe making some slight modifications to any of the items listed in there. So, but more or less, Action A is the result of a number of meetings of the Lynn Road Ad Hoc Committee. Just to give a background as to how Exhibit A was developed, it was from the formation of the Ad Hoc Committee at the direction of the City Council, based on a petition submitted by residents along Lynn Road with traffic issues between Hillcrest Drive and Starfire, which is approximately a 3-mile stretch of Lynn Road. The committee looked at various traffic issues, including noise concerns mainly generated by large trucks, traffic control and access issues at uncontrolled intersections, traffic congestion, collision issues and speeding concerns, as well as pedestrian and bicyclist issues. The committee met 6 times this year. The committee was comprised of 2 council members, the chair of the traffic committee or traffic commission, and 4 members of 4 citizens who reside along Lynn Road, as well as members of Public Works and the Thousand Oaks Police Department. After consideration of the input received by the committee members, members of the public, and hearing information provided by the Public Works staff, Police Department, Planning Department, and City Attorney, Exhibit A summarizes the recommendations to try to develop some solutions to this concerns regarding speeding, noise, and access issues along Lynn Road. It is recommended that the plan it is recommended that the Traffic Commission recommend a plan be adopted by the City Council, and once the Council considers the action plan, staff will present a report to Council to authorize appropriate funding sources and proceed with the implementation of the plan. Okay. There's an exhibit on the wall I placed. Shows 8 action items that the plan had recommended. I'll go through each item briefly. Items number 1 through 4 basically address speeding concerns. Number 1 is to install radar feedback signs on both sides of Lynn Road at various locations. Number 2 is to identify and construct motorcycle staging areas, which are locations in the median which would allow motor officers to rest their motorcycles for police enforcement, because currently the situation on Lynn Road is that it is very difficult for the police department to actually enforce the speed limits, since there's very little safe locations for them to rest their motorcycles or vehicles and enter the traffic, the flow of traffic. Item number 3 is to increase police enforcement once these staging areas are constructed. And number 4 is to perform engineering radar surveys to reevaluate the speeds to see whether or not items 1 through 3 are effective. The basic premise behind items 1 through 4 is that people believe that the speed limit on Lynn Road is set too high, which we've heard in the public comments. The difficulty in lowering the speed limits is that, number 1, there's a conflict with the speed limit law based on a court ruling, which is the Goulet court ruling that Chair McMahon had mentioned earlier. Basically, speed limits must be set according to the way drivers are driving the road, and that is based on 85% of the traffic driving along Lynn Road. So currently there's 2 speed limits set. South of Camino Manzanas, it's 45 miles an hour, and north of Manzanas, it's 50 miles an hour. So the speed limits were based according to what the speeds were measured by radar surveys. They were taken during non-peak traffic periods. So when we set the speed limits, we need to be in compliance with state law. If you are not in compliance with state law, then basically the speed limits are unenforceable with radar. Second issue with setting the speed limit too low is that that it may not achieve the results that the residents along Lynn Road are seeking. This is based on the fact that the engineering staff back in 1995 did a before and after traffic study of changing speed limits. Speed limit signs were changed at 10 locations throughout the city to see if there's any influence on driver behavior. After the speed limit signs were reduced at these locations, it was found that the speed limits were changed very little. On average, they changed 1 mile per hour. So some drivers might drive according to the signs that are posted, but our findings are consistent with the national findings that most people don't drive according to what's posted on a sign. They drive according to the apparent road conditions. Action plan number 5 is to change signal timing synchronization at various locations so that their start and stop times end earlier or start earlier. Currently, there's some concern about delay at various intersections because we have synchronization at certain intersections that are on until 9 o'clock at night or even during the weekends, some concern was raised that some of these synchronization patterns could be reduced, and that's something that we're going to look into. Number 6 on the action plan is to look at intersection improvements at intersections that currently don't have traffic signals. They're uncontrolled intersections, and they include Lotus, Sidley, Calle Laredo, and Camino Manzanas. We're going to have to perform various additional traffic engineering studies, since when we look at traffic engineering devices or traffic signals, we base them on traffic engineering standards. So we're going to have to perform additional study to see whether or not engineering warrants are met. This item would probably have to come back to the commission so that if recommendations based on installation of engineering devices are required, then we would have to notify the public since some of the local residents might be impacted by any traffic control measures, so we'd want to receive public input. Item number 7 on the action plan is the installation of pedestrian countdown timers at various traffic signals. What we're hoping to achieve with this item is to hopefully better educate pedestrians who are crossing intersections. Some people have voiced concern with the walk times at locations, and the pedestrian countdown timers tell the pedestrian how much crossing time they have remaining. So we have some countdown timers at various intersections in town. We have positive feedback on these locations, and so we're going to look at putting these in along Lynn Road. Item number 8 is the de-designation of Lynn Road from the municipal code as a truck route. Currently, Lynn Road is a truck route from the Dos Vientos area all the way to the easterly city limits, which is into Simi Valley. This is probably the most complex issue, and it would require additional review. We're currently looking at some issues that would be raised by this item, including the items of whether or not there might be a loss of federal funding for road rehabilitation projects along Lynn Road. We'll have to look at impacts to the school district, since currently Lynn Road does not have direct frontage with the school. But if Lynn Road was de-designated, there's a possibility that most of the trucks will then come down Moore Park Road, which has schools fronting Thousand Oaks High School. Herbs Road is another alternative route, and that one has Colinas School fronting. We'll also have to take a look at the impacts to other roads where trucks would have to divert in order to get to their destination point. So this is an item that would require additional review, and we would have to bring this back to the Traffic Commission. But that concludes our report, and I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Commissioner?
Just a point of record. I think it's Los Cerritos Middle School that fronts Herbs Road, not Colina. It's on the corner of Herbs and Avenida de las Flores. And then Colina is actually on Hillcrest, a little bit in from Herbs.
Okay, before we start with questions for staff, Sergeant Kenny, did you want to clarify my garbled explanation? It might be a good idea.
Well, this will be from the law enforcement point of view as far as the enforcement of the speed limit on Lynn Road. There's been a lot of talk about the Goulet decision, and basically that is kind of our guideline as to what we receive from the traffic and engineering surveys as to what the speed limit will be posted. The gentleman talked a little bit about 22350 of the California Vehicle Code, which is what we call the basic speed law. No one will drive at a speed that is basically unsafe. Well, what makes it unsafe? Well, in order for us to use our electronic devices like radar or LiDAR, we have to have a traffic and engineering survey. The traffic and engineering survey has to state what the 85th percentile or 85% of the people are going, and the speed limit has to be within 5 miles per hour of that 85th percentile. Example, if on Lynn Road, in the area where we're talking about north of Camino Manzanas, it's posted at 50 miles an hour. Well, if the 85th percentile shows that it is 51 miles per hour, well, by law, by state law, the Goulet decision, they cannot drop it down to 45 miles per hour and allow us to use radar or laser in order to enforce the speed limit. If we were to go into court with a ticket that we had written in violation of the Goulet decision, the judge would sit there and look at the radar survey, they would look at the speed limit, and they would say that this does not comply with the Goulet decision, and the case would get dismissed before we had an opportunity to completely testify as to whether or not the speed was unsafe, because we had used a radar or laser in order to try and enforce the vehicle code. So that's the problem that we run into as far as our ability to enforce the speed limit using radar and laser. We have to have a traffic and engineering survey. It has to be within 5 miles per hour of what the 85th percentile is, and if it's not, then we can't write the ticket. Does that help?
Is this working now? No. Is it working? I've never had to be that close before. Okay, I'm going to try it. Okay, are there any questions of staff at this time? Sure, I had one question. When you stated possible loss of federal funding by de-designated Lynn Road as a truck route, I don't quite understand. We get funding for our general transportation fund by having a truck route. I don't understand what that means exactly.
Yes, I believe you're referring to a portion of the report that says that it's possible that federal or state funding could not be obtained if we were to pursue a grant or something if the street was undesignated. I think that's what that's coming from, right?
It comes under noise concerns / commercial truck traffic, and it's one of the bullet points. And it says possible loss of federal funding by de-designating Lynn Road as a truck route. Does that mean that we can't go after certain grants, or does that mean money will not be given to us that we're usually getting?
We don't believe that we'll lose any money that we're usually getting, but we don't know because we haven't applied for a grant yet in terms of it being a truck route or not. It's probably not going to be a factor, but we don't know enough to really say for sure to you tonight that if you de-designate it, then we're free and clear to get any grant we want, because it may be a holding up issue.
Would these be grants specifically for truck routes that you would be going after?
Yeah, for instance, there was, I was reading some legislation that talked about grants for truck improvements that were offered for municipalities across the nation to compete for money to improve truck improvements. And most of that actually applied to places that had, truck stops and that kind of thing. But that raised the issue that is a designated truck route going to be a factor sometime for us? So until we know that for sure, then we can't tell you for sure. And so that's what we're saying.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Lemo?
Yeah, I'd like to ask what is almost an identical question, but a lot different way, so that I can understand it. What I think I hear you saying is we don't lose any money whatsoever that we have today if we just designate that as, or de-designate it as a truck route, but there is a potential for things that we may apply for, a potential that we may not be able to apply for those things in the future. So far, am I understanding that part correctly?
I don't think it'd be as strong as a potential.
Okay, so
I
it's
just-
not even
it's
as
just
strong
a-
as the potential.
Right, the lack of the information or
So
from the
when, if
federal-
we were to make a recommendation to council, it would certainly not affect today's general fund. And I guess what I'm kind of asking, without drawing too much of a conclusion, is we would have the freedom to recommend doing the right thing with no financial encumbrance today, or even something as strong as a potential in the future. Is that an accurate way to put it?
Yes, if you wanted to make a contingent type of a recommendation until we know for certain, and we're checking, but we just don't have that information for you tonight.
Right, but the worst that could happen is that you would find out for certain that there is something maybe as strong as a potential that we may not be able to apply for something, which, by the way, we wouldn't be guaranteed of getting anyway, in the future. But between now and whenever that could happen, we could, in theory, and I don't have enough information to make a decision or even a recommendation to council, but we could make a decision that's good for the situation today, because you can't lose what you don't have. Whatever money we couldn't apply for can't really cost us.
Yes, you could do
Okay,
that.
thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions of staff? Commissioners?
Okay. I hate to beat a dead horse, but do we get any funding, state or federal, for keeping alternative routes available currently?
No, we do not.
Thank you. Any more questions of staff? Okay, at this time.
I had a question, actually.
Oh, okay.
The new guy. I was just wondering if there's some way to restrict the hours on which trucks can drive on Lynn Road, and that might have an impact that might be satisfactory to the residents there. Legally, though.
In terms of time restricted uses, sometimes those have been used in parking situations and in turning situations. The difficulty is in the enforcement end. That means that an officer would have to be out there, during those times and not other times. Generally, we'd rather not do it that way because it does present another variable that's difficult from the enforcement standpoint. So we think that it should either be or not. And in that way, it's...
Okay. Any more questions? Okay, at this time, we have 20 speaker cards. We have a lot of people who feel very strongly about this. And please, when you come up, state your name, city of residence. If somebody has said essentially what you've said before, please make it brief. We know y'all want to be heard, and we want to hear you, but maybe not 10 times in a row, the same thing. You understand. The main speaker is Mr. Worth, and he has 10 minutes. And then everyone else has 5 minutes. And then Mr. Worth gets a rebuttal at the end of 5 minutes. So at this time, Mr. Worth.
Hi, I just want to make one brief comment on what Mr. Halliwell said. We've been meeting for 6 months, and 2 months have passed. 8 months have passed since the ad hoc committee started discussing trucks and all these other things. And I have to say that if the traffic department needed to have time to review these things, they've had 8 months to do it. So why in the world do they need to have more time now? I don't understand that. But that's my comment to what he said. They've had plenty of time, all kinds of time. 2 months after the ad hoc committee stopped until today. How much more time do they need? Okay, my name is Lewis Worth. And again, I'm a member of the North Lynn Road Community Association, was a chairman of the ad hoc committee. Today I want to talk about the second phase of what I'm talking about. Can't talk about everything, speed limits. I was one of several people who surveyed over 800 residents about noise and traffic issues and who collected petition signatures from them, reflecting their concerns about noise and excessive speed on Lynn Road. More than a year and a half ago, they asked the City Council and I asked the Traffic Commission to do something about it. It's been a long time. The ad hoc committee agreed with the need to lower speed limits, but decided to first try calming measures to lower traffic speed. They consist primarily of electronic speed tracking signs and increased radar enforcement subsequent to building concrete pads for motorcycle concealments. Estimated construction is 1.5 years, and they tell me that they want 6 months worth of evaluation. So that means another 2 years. Okay, we need it now. We needed it 2 years ago, and not 2 years from now, not 4 years, please. In reference to motorcycle pads, it's a great idea. We need lots more enforcement. I'm 100% behind Sergeant Kenny. But I also have a personal opinion that if you want to do high profiling to reduce the number of speeders, maybe they should be able to see the motorcycles and the police cars instead of having them hide someplace. I'd like to see them right out in plain view so they see them. Maybe you might lose a couple of tickets, but I'd like to see lots of motorcycles out there, police motorcycles, all the time. In regard to the weight, lowering the speed limit is the core of noise reduction and traffic safety. Nothing else will do the job. We've already waited for almost 2 years while traffic noise increased enormously and accidents increased. There's no reason to wait another 2 years or more while concealment motorcycle pads are planned, built, and evaluated. The calming measures are good, but they're only the frosting on the cake. We have discussed these matters for 6 months. There's no need to look further into how to lower speed limits. We've already done that. And what Sergeant Kenny neglected to mention, and what Mr. Mashiko neglected to mention, there is a perfectly clear procedure in state law that is applicable to Lynn Road to lower the speed limit by 5 miles an hour, provided certain conditions are met. It's there, it's crystal clear, and it works right with Goulet. It's part of it. Goulet says, do that if you're going to lower the speed limits. Okay, the traffic engineering department ought to be able to put together the required data within a day. There's nothing surprising here. You'll see that later on. They've already conducted the necessary speed field tests. The means to lower the speed limit is absolutely clear. It's available. Lower the speed limits now between Hillcrest and Starfire and implement the calming measures as they become available to encourage compliance with the new speed limits. Why wait? Lower the speed limits now and use these calming measures. Everything will help. We need help. All the help we can get. There is no defensible reason to make the Lynn Road residents wait another 2 years for what should have been done almost 2 years ago. 4 years is a long time. It sure is. I want to emphasize that the speed limit is neither sacred nor written in stone. It was 45 miles an hour for a big chunk of the way for years, and was only raised to 50 miles an hour between Camino Manzanas and Wildwood in 2002. The part from Hillcrest to Camino Manzanas has been 45 for a long, long time. It can be lowered. It needs to be lowered. Thousand Oaks is no longer the rural town it was 30 or so years ago. It's a large and congested city, and current excessive speed limits in residential areas should be a thing of the past. I ask this commission to vote to recommend immediate speed reduction on Lynn Road and not to wait for another 2 years. Now, in reference to engineering surveys, there is a procedure where you can lower the speed limit if there are enough problems on the road to warrant it. And usually they talk about unusual conditions not readily apparent to the driver. But you can also use readily apparent conditions such as heavy brush, hills, big hills, and so on. And I want to refer to in the appendix, page 29. It says this: generally, the most decisive evidence of conditions not apparent to the motorist surface is accident histories. In other words, the strongest exception that you can make, and you can lower the speed limit by 5 miles an hour if you have the exceptions. It says here the strongest proof of this, of these unusual circumstances, is demonstrated by having high accident rates. And guess what? From Hillcrest up to our target zone Starfire, accident rates are high. And if you had the appendix, you'd be able to see the survey reports. They show that they're high. Okay. I have to kind of wing this because my stuff is over here. If you refer to page 43, can I turn the clock off for a second? Okay, we're looking at page 43. These are samples. I wish I could show them to you, but they don't have the electronics to be able to do it. Okay, if you look at page 43, and you look up near the right-hand side, the first block, it's dark. It says collision rates. On the right side, it says comparison road, road. The other side, it says this road. This particular one is Wildwood to Arbalez. It says the comparable road has 1.40 accidents per 1,000 vehicle miles. This road has 2.81, double what the average is. Okay? Now, if you could look over to page 44, this is Lynn from Arbalez to Flores. Same thing, collision rate comparable is 1.40. On this road is 1.76. This is the biggest justification to lower it by 5 miles an hour if you have high collision rates. All right, we look to the next one. This is Flores to Jans. If you look at folks at 45, the comparable is 140. This road, 2.78, double. Okay? And we look at the last section, which is page 46. Comparable is 1.40. Accident rate on this section is 2.45. Okay, we all know that because we hear the accidents, but it shows it on here. These are the surveys that were done and signed off on in 2002. Okay. Now, I also would like you to go back to page 43 for a second and look under unusual conditions, just a little bit further down. It says high collision rates. This is page 43. Back to the original. We're talking about the 4 road segments where the speed limit was gone from 45 to 50 miles an hour, okay? High collision rates, unusual road curves, heavy pedestrian bicycle activity, and of course, high collision rates. We look at 44. High collision rates, horizontal road curves, heavy pedestrian bicycle activity, same thing. Adequate justification to have lowered the speed limit, to have held the speed limit of 45 if somebody wanted to do that. Okay, page 45. Same justifications, high collision rates, horizontal, this is page 45, under unusual conditions. High collision rates, horizontal road curves, vertical road curves, heavy pedestrian bicycle activity. Swinging over to page 46, this is Jans to Camino Manzanas. High collision rates, horizontal road curves, vertical road curves, heavy pedestrian bicycle activity. My conclusion is, and what you see, is everything that's on here says there is adequate justification to have kept it at 45 miles an hour. This is spelled out very clearly in the law. However, if you look a little bit further down, recommended speed on all 4 of them, on 2002, they recommended 50 miles an hour. The justification was there. Now, the same justification holds true now. You could take these, put today's numbers in it, probably wouldn't change much, and you would have enough to lower the speed limit. Goulet compliant, if you want to use that magic word, there's enough there to lower the speed limit, and this is the way to do it. The conditions have not changed on the road. Somebody just didn't want the speed limits to stay at 45. They had the ammunition, they didn't use them. Let's use them now. That's the way. It's right within the law. And if you ask Mr. Helliwell or Mashiko or Sergeant Kenny, they're going to agree with you. They didn't mention this, but they will agree completely. This is within the law. Okay, and what I'm trying to say is this. In regard to these calming measures, why do Band-Aids? Why do what ifs? And maybe it'll lower it down. It'll calm the traffic down. We need the speed limits lowered. We got the tool to do it. By God, it doesn't take a genius to say do it. And why wait? Why wait for 2 years? No justification. And if there is, maybe later on, these folks can tell us why it's so important to wait another 2 years. Okay, in regard to truck traffic, we have some other things that I have to discuss. Truck routes are intended to focus truck traffic to and from industrial and commercial centers. There are no such centers around Lynn Road. With the exception of the hospital, it is all residential, and you all know this. Actually, to tell the truth, the truck route system is completely dysfunctional in Thousand Oaks. If you take, next time you go along the 101 exits to Thousand Oaks and the 23 for freeway exits, take a good long look and see if you have any signs anywhere that tell the truckers what streets to take. You won't find a one. They don't identify them. They don't identify them. So what in the hell good are truck routes if the truckers don't know where they are? Ask the traffic sergeant, Kenny, whether truck route infractions are ever enforced. I already asked him. I know the answer. He said they don't know what streets are truck routes. So the answer is no. And if I'm lying, he's over there.
Excuse me, can you wrap it up?
Pardon me?
Your 10 minutes are up.
Okay. Well, if anybody has any questions about these conditions that these folks have said to prevent you from recommending that the truck routes be changed, ask me later on if you have any questions, and I'll be able to give you the answers, okay? Thank you.
You will have 5 minutes at the end. Okay.
Well, one of the gentlemen said that if they had any questions, would they be able to ask us? Please, ask me, okay?
Thank you. Next is Tula Clovis, excuse me. And then after that, Bruce Douglas.
Tula Clovis. Again, I'm here tonight to please ask you to take action without further delay in lowering the speed limit in Lynn Road, in placing a light on Lotus, on Sidley, and on Laredo, on stopping the trucks from traveling our streets instead of the freeway. Together with my husband, we circulated a petition at the entire Lynn Ranch North development for the installation of a light on Lotus, and out of the 150 residences, we collected 106 signatures. 106 people want a light on Lotus. Almost every other house has been involved in an accident. The situation is truly serious. From the accident records, there are at least 2 accidents a month happening on the vicinity of Lotus and Lynn. Many very serious. On the 30th of October, I saw with my friend over there an injury accident, very serious. In addition, I cannot go on feeling that I'm trapped in my neighborhood. In case of emergency, at the time the gridlock happens, and considering that the other access to Lynn Road, Manzanas, is equally congested and out of the way, a light is absolutely essential. Our safety is in danger. The given report to you mentions cars, but nowhere there's a safety mentioned. Pedestrians, especially older people and children, going to the 2 neighboring schools, Madronia and Redwood, are in danger. Even with a light, would you let your child cross a street where cars go somewhere between 60 and 65 miles an hour? It may be posted 50, but believe me, they go faster when the traffic is not heavy. Would you walk along a freeway? The developer of Lynn Ranch North, for the people of Lynn Ranch North, built Johns Road traffic light. Perhaps we should regain access to it. Would you like us to break the law and go through the emergency street? They are breaking the law all over in Lynn Road. People trapped in the neighborhood of Lynn Ranch North are not allowed to cross Lynn and are blocked by a gridlock which defies the law. We cannot go in or out since the traffic stops solid between Johns Road and Camino Manzanas. I have some photos here for you. Blatantly disregarding the law and leaving an intersection at the intersection blocked. I have yet to see a policeman parked on Lotus to give tickets for breaking the gridlock law. That's not the Goulet. There are no further tests needed for that, and anything suggested, with the exception of law enforcement, would be erroneous and deceiving. The existing uncontrolled high speeds, the multiple oversized trucks that disrupt our peace, and the daily presence of danger are ruining our quality of life. This cannot go on. There can be no delays and postponements and more senseless surveys that will lead to no real solution but only provide busy work to the staff and put off getting solutions. I'm tired hearing of what the city cannot do. I want to hear what you can do. And here I have some photos that I went back of accidents and gridlock. And here I have a copy of the Kansas City.
Excuse me,
petition.
Tula?
So here. Yeah.
You'll need to speak on the mic.
But I like the permission.
You cannot be heard in the record if you're not speaking in a microphone.
Yeah, well, I have here photographs of accidents that happen in Lynn Road. They climb the hills. I have children walking to go to school. I have the gridlock blocking Lotus. Yesterday, I came back from Pittsburgh and I stayed an hour and a half waiting to take pictures, but I didn't develop it. It was horrible. And I told the woman, you know, you're breaking the law. And she said, cool it, lady. So please help us. The situation is it's not the safest city in the United States. And this is a copy of the names of the petition for having a light in Lynn Road. And this, if maybe you like to look at the pictures. I'm finished. You can circulate this among yourself.
Okay, thank you.
I think we should not delay it anymore. No more studies.
I'm sorry, you need to speak in the microphone if you're going to speak.
I think we don't need any more studies. It's very simple. We need the speed lowered, Goulet or not Goulet. I don't think any place in the world can say you can go as fast as you want because the law won't let us. That's stupid.
Next up is Bruce Douglas, and after Bruce is Carol McNutt.
Madam Chairwoman, ladies and gentlemen of the Commission, thank you for taking the time. I appreciate the opportunity to be heard. I've been a resident of Lynn Ranch, Thousand Oaks, for 10 years. And over that period of time, I have seen the situation, as every speaker has alluded to, worsen. And to the point now that if we have a problem with Goulet and enforcement, as Mr. Worth said, the simple thing, install the lights at the uncontrolled intersections and stop the traffic. If we make it inconvenient for the through traffic coming from Simi Valley and from Moore Park, then they will go onto the 23 when the 23 is no longer a construction zone. And they will go and they will fight through the delays there. Maybe they will stagger their departure and arrival times so that it lessens their travel. But we're in a residential zone. And right now, I have two teenage drivers. Lynn Road and Lynn Ranch, we have youthful drivers, which implies inexperienced drivers. We have old drivers, like Mr. Worth and myself, who are sometimes not 100%, maybe only 85th percentile. We have cell phones, we have DVD players, we have navigation systems. We have more cars per family than we had when this track was set up and when these roads were developed. The one issue abiding of every other consideration is the speed must be lowered. And if the only way to expedite that is to put up the lights and certainly enhance that by the other calming effects, then I'm for every proposal in the action plan, and I am particularly interested in the enforcement and in those lights at those uncontrolled intersections, because our domestic tranquility has been interrupted by the fact that we have forbid our children from taking to access Lynn Road through Laredo, that we will ground them, take away their vehicles for a month if we catch them or if our good neighbors see them not going up to Dos Rios and taking a right or a left at that light. So, in conclusion, I would like to add my voice to the voice of previous speakers and probably speakers to come and in the next meeting that we need to expedite our efforts here. We need to work certainly within the letter of the law, but we also need to get the will of the people, the common sense, and the political will and operate in the spirit of the law and find a way to get these lights up there, because the cost, the downside cost, is it can be one of my kids. It could be one of your kids. It could be one of your commissioners. It could be one of these folks. No matter how you look at the statistics, that price is too excessive. Please join with us in the community as part of the community and let us come together and solve this problem as expeditiously as possible, because 2 years of study is not acceptable for the people who are trapped in Lynn Ranch and Lynn Ranch North and in the racket clubs, condos. It's just not going to work, and the cost of delay is injury, destruction of property, and ultimately the life of somebody in our community. Please do not let this be the final statistic that moves the commission and the city council to move ahead as expeditiously as possible to implement this plan and get those lights there. They are desperately needed. Thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you. Carol McNutt, and after Carol is Larry McNutt.
My name is Carol McNutt, and I live on Wildwood Avenue for the last 25 years. Excuse me.
You might want to use the lower one because you're not close enough.
Can't hear me?
Another soft-spoken person.
At the last meeting that I was at in September, we were told we could come to share additional ideas on how to solve the problem. And I know that one of the things that we've talked about a lot is the volume of cars and people coming from Moore Park and from Simi trying to get to their places of employment, which I honestly believe is probably most of the industrial area out in Newbury Park, specifically Amgen. I work at a local university and I ride a van pool with 12 other people. And I don't know what kind of programs the city has with the businesses in the area, but I think if you could encourage Amgen, especially since we know they are a huge employer in our area, to encourage them to offer van pools to their employees coming from Simi and Moore Park. You know, if you could imagine 15 cars ahead of you gone for one van, it would have an impact. If you could encourage them to stagger work hours for people who maybe don't want a van pool for whatever reasons they might have, I think that those are really legitimate solutions to some of the traffic that we could eliminate on the road. And talking about all those cars coming from Simi and Moore Park, I think everybody in this room would probably admit that when they see a speed limit, mentally they go, oh, I can go 5 more miles over. So if we honestly know the 85 percentile of idiots out there driving too fast are endangering the other 15% of us that are driving at a safe, reasonable speed, I think if you lower the speed limit and maybe calculate for that 5 they're automatically going to add on, at least you would be somewhere in the ballpark of maybe just mentally getting them in that calming effect or the reasonable speed. The officer had made a comment about people don't drive at a speed that's not safe. I totally disagree with that, because I'm on the freeway and I get cut off by little cars all the time. I'm on Lynn Road and I get cut off by vehicles that I know can't see me, you know, just when I'm trying to get to the market. So people do drive at unsafe speeds, and I think that by lowering the speed limit, again, we can make a difference on Lynn Road. Anyway, so my suggestions are encouraging Amgen and other large employers to van pool. I don't know if you can give them some kind of a break or an incentive for them to do that, but I know we have regulatory affairs at our university that we're supposed to comply with. So I assume that the city must have something within the state regulations that they're supposed to be doing. Thank you.
Thank you. Larry McNutt, and after that, George Clovis.
My name is Larry McNutt. Been living in the house that we have for about 25 years, which Lynn Road is our backyard. I don't know if I can add something to Exhibit A. I was told to come with some ideas of out-of-the-box thinking. So I have a thought. I want to share it with you. To try and solve this Lynn Road traffic control situation, since I think you all might know that the majority of our traffic problems is from our beloved neighbors in Simi Valley, Moore Park, and Camarillo, that refuse to use the 23 and 101 freeways at this point. I propose a different idea. I propose a toll road charge. Not to charge our beloved residents of Thousand Oaks, but those beloved residents of Simi Valley, Moore Park, and Camarillo that want to use this road. We have toll roads all over America. How they got started, I don't know, but I do know if you charge $4 a day to go up and down this particular road, $20 a week, $80 a month, there's some Thousand Oaks revenue going on there. It might sound crazy or unrealistic, but like I said, we do have toll roads everywhere, and this is a historical, scenic drive. President Ronald Reagan and others went up this road to his final resting place. So my suggestion, if it can be added, a toll road to which would definitely reduce traffic. No one's going to pay $80 a month to go down a 3-mile stretch of road, and which would include the trucks going down there also. Thank you.
Thank you. George Clovis, and then Leonard Goodman.
Sorry about the delay. I'm here again, George Clovis. I have 3 things to tell you. Number 1 is the Goulet. I'd like all of you to know that Goulet, Mr. Goulet, was a traffic engineer, and somebody told me that sometime worked for the city of Thousand Oaks. And his wife got a ticket in Camarillo, and he used the law that we paid for him to learn to file the ticket. And that's how the ticket, that law came to play. Now, I like to bring your attention to something else that is in the book that was provided by our engineering department. On page 22, it says that short speed zones of less than 0.8 kilometers should be avoided. That is for engineering reports, traffic reports. 0.8 kilometers should be avoided except in transition areas. In other words, stretches of 0.8 kilometers should not be used, the engineering report should not be utilized. If you go now on page 23, at the bottom of the left bottom of the page, it says the speed limit normally should be established at the first 5 mile per hour increment below the 85 percentile. Below. It's 5 miles below the 85 percentile limit. And now go to page that we have our city's traffic reports, the traffic surveys. And first of all, these engineering parameters are not met. That is on page 43, 44, 45, and 46. And let's start with, all of them are about the same. The length of that stretch is 0.31 miles, which is 0.46 kilometers. And that does not meet the requirement of the 0.8 minimum. 0.8 minimum. In addition to that, the critical speed limit is calculated on page 43, which is the Wildwood Avenue, Avenida de los Árboles, is calculated to be 51 miles per hour. That's supposed to be 5 miles, minimum 5 miles, below the 85 percentile. Oh, I'm sorry. That should be calculated from the 85th percentile. The 85th percentile, it cannot be calculated but by interpolation of two numbers, because the only listed is 84.3 and 89.8. 85 is between the two numbers. You have to interpolate them. Are you with me? Yes. Probably not. Probably not. You have to interpolate the numbers. If you do that, in other words, take the numbers between 89.8% and 84.3%, interpolate to find the 85 percentile, then this number has to be changed to 50. The 51 has to be lowered to 50. I don't know where Mr. Masico and Mr. Halliwell found the 51, because I cannot find it. I have a PhD. I cannot find it. If you do the interpolation correctly, it's closer to 50 than to 51. Is that clear? Now, if you lower that 5 miles, it goes to 45. But I forgot to tell you the best of all. It says 5 miles below the 85 percentile limit, percentile number. Therefore, the 50 becomes 45, right? The 50 becomes 45. However, it says in page 23, however, in matching existing conditions with the traffic safety needs,
you're going to need to wrap it up.
Do you remember the word safety? Safety needs, then the city is obliged to lower it another 5.
I'm sorry.
Another 5. I don't have to say anything about Goulet. Goulet is a fake law. It should not exist. And the city has to enforce the law for our protection.
All right.
Not for the protection of the wives of people that know how to manipulate laws.
Next we have Leonard Goodman. And after that, Cheryl Hendrickson.
Hi, I'm Leonard Goodman, 1879 Marion Avenue, a corner of Marion and Lotus, about 150 feet in from Main Street of Lynn. This morning I happened to be driving with my wife down Westlake Boulevard, and we turned onto Keenan Road going towards Costco. And I noticed that in 2 spots, when I'm driving, it came 35 all of a sudden. It's 35 for about a block, and then it went back to the 45. And again, it happened like that. I have found in 75 years that curves in streets or roads are dangerous. People tend to have more problems with it. I think that, first of all, lowering the speed is one thing. That would certainly help. The other thing is that if we would put this like they did in Westlake on Canaan Road there, to lower it at the curves to 35, let's say, for the short period of time, we would lessen the problems at Lotus Road. Secondly, I noticed just north of Lotus on Lynn Road, there's bushes there. And if you're not watching closely, some of the lower cars, you don't see them. Now, I drive in and out, I'm retired now, and I drive in and out there constantly every day. And I'm watching, always watching. Some people don't watch. And of course, those bushes should be removed completely, not the trees, but the bushes. I absolutely am against a stoplight at Lotus and Lynn. I figure while we could put a stoplight at every street in Thousand Oaks, and that's the way it's becoming, it's not the reason. I think certainly lowering the speed would help, not only for the sound reasons. I'm not an engineer, and there's reasons why we should be able to lower it. But the curve, if you go on, take a chance and go over onto Canaan Road off of Westlake Boulevard and see what I'm talking about. How is it that on some of the areas there they got a 35 for about a block, and then it goes back to the higher speed limits? So my thought is that with the exception of the early morning, I have no problem with Lynn Road. I would like to see it lower. I see no reason why we have to go 50 miles an hour there. I wouldn't mind it at 35. But I think if we just take some basic steps if we can lower it by 5, that would certainly be great. And taking away the bushes there, but not a stoplight. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
I better use this one. Bend over. My name is Cheryl Hendrickson, and I live at 602 Camino Verde. I've been a resident of Thousand Oaks for 14 years and a resident of Lynn Ranch for 3.5. Our property, we have 160 feet that backs to Lynn Road. I've been working in my backyard early in the morning at 6 a.m. and noticed a complete line of semi-trucks right over my fence while I'm working, and was shocked at that, and then to find out that it was a designated truck route. I'm going to not talk about a lot of the things that have already been mentioned, just hit the things that are maybe different. I have children who do attend Redwood who cross I believe in walking in a community, and that walk to and from Redwood and cross Lynn Road. And one of my sons was nearly hit, and one of his friends on a separate accident was nearly hit. And they were abiding by the lights and crossing there. It's a very unsafe situation. I know about 1.5 years ago, he wrote to the city council as part of his requirement for citizenship in the community merit badge about a problem that he observed in the community, and he complained about the noise and the speed on Lynn Road and how it was affecting his personal safety. He was explaining how he has difficulty sleeping at night because his bedroom is in the back of our home, backs up to Lynn Road, and also how these near misses about getting hit. And the response, and I'm sorry I don't have the letter in front of me, and I think it was from Dennis Gillette, but I remember reading it, and he was explaining that it was a little bit more difficult situation. He would love to lower the speed limit law, but that there was some grant money that the city was trying to get for radar detectors. And in order to get those, they had to have certain number of miles of streets in excess of certain miles an hour in order to get that grant. And this was part of that thoroughfare. So I thought, well, that was interesting that they're putting money ahead of safety of kids. Secondly, we built a big waterfall and a koi pond back up against our wall to try to mush out a lot of the sound of Lynn Road. And what we also have found is that I cannot maintain the acid level in my pond. It's always high acid no matter what I'm dumping into it. And I was trying to figure out what's going on here. And it's the pollutants that are coming over the wall and dumping in and killing the fish. I can't keep fish and plants in there because of the soot and pollution that is coming over the wall. And yet there's still a 6-foot wall requirement along Lynn Road. So let's see. Some of my comments about the speed limit, my proposal was really that you ought to do what city councils that have taken charge of their community have done. I know when I drive up to Mammoth or June Mountain and you go through Big Pine and Independence and Lone Pine and Bishop, you hit that, 70, 65, 55, 45, 35, and then you're crawling through the town. And I can't imagine that those towns are in non-compliance with Goulet. They have decided to take charge of their town and make that a priority rather than the convenience of the through drivers. I know it's annoying when you're driving it. Same situation as I was driving with a relative recently through Corrales, New Mexico. And we were in 65 and all of a sudden we came to Corrales and it came abruptly to 25 miles an hour through the city. And I was so annoyed that I was going to have to go so slowly through this little town. There was a little sign there that said, drive slow, see our town, drive fast, see our judge. And I thought, as I contemplated that, I thought, they have a point there because they are taking control of their town and deciding what the quality of life is to be for those residents. And that's what this city council needs to do. You can work with Goulet. If you put the traffic lights in at Wildwood or Lotus or Laredo, it will decrease the traffic. If you lower the speed limit and then enforce it, it will, of necessity, slow the traffic down. There's no enforcement now. There's no reason for people to slow down because they're not being enforced.
I'm sorry, ma'am.
Okay, I had one question on Goulet. I didn't understand. I had a question of the officer. It wasn't quite clear whether you are prohibited from using radar guns on Lynn Road or whether you're just prohibited from using the results in court. Because I bet you can still use the radar guns, and most of those citizens will pay the tickets for enforcement. And if they do go to court, but the more you're there enforcing and the more you're writing tickets, the more people will slow down. So it needs to be enforced. The lights need to go in, and it ought to be down to 35 miles an hour and that stretch.
Thank you. Okay. Nancy Stevens and then Robert Jalise. I'm sorry, I'm probably butchering it.
Good evening. My name is Nancy Stevens. I've lived at 690 Calle Sequoia for 37 years, been in Thousand Oaks for 38 years. My wall backs up to Lynn Road. I've repaired at one point or another every part of it because of people speeding and hitting it. The last accident that hit it 3 times because of the speed that was going. Fortunately, the person wasn't hurt. I don't know how, but the cost of everything, the safety keeps going down the tubes because nothing has been done. I was hand-delivered the agenda tonight by someone from Supervisor Linda Parks. I don't know whether, and I was told that there would be somebody here tonight from there, and I don't know if there is now or not. But anyway, I had called to inform Linda Parks that because we're in the county, we need support from that end also, I think probably for funding for both because it's city and county. And so they were showing enough interest to send a representative. I have done petitions. I brought petitions in tonight with some help from other people that did canvassing both in Lynn Ranch and in Thousand Oaks over in the Racket Club. People could hardly wait to sign, not only about the traffic light, which I'm really pushing there at Cali Laredo and Lynn Road, but because of the noise and the pollution. They want the traffic slowed down, and most people feel that one of the ways of doing that is getting a traffic light there. There have been surveys outside my property. I'm right on the corner there. And when they did the survey, they only did it on one side of the road. It was for people going out. They didn't do it on the other side for people coming in. In the morning, not only is it backed up past the corner that I'm on, from Lynn Road back to Cali Sequoia, which is what I face, but it backs up on the turn line, people coming in from the other direction from Newbury Park to drop their kids off at Madronia, which is the elementary school there. And so we're getting traffic not only trying to get out of there, but we have traffic trying to come in too, because they don't want to go to the light and spend all that time waiting at a light. Actually, they have to go through 2 lights to get up to Madronia. And so we're getting a lot of traffic in and out of there in the morning. We definitely need a light. I'm trying to think of the other point. We're compared, Lynn Road is compared to Moore Park. Moore Park is a commercial street. There is no residential along there. All the way from Hillcrest to 23, it is all residential, with the exception of the hospital, Los Robles, and the golf course at Sunset Hills. And so I can't understand why we're being compared to commercial streets. The other 2 streets that are mentioned in this too, all have, at least half of them, have commercial area. They don't have residential. And to me, having that kind of speed and having this kind of a traffic problem on a residential highway, even though it's 2 lanes each way, is, to me, ridiculous. Anyway, that's all I'm going to say. Thank you.
Thank you. 2 quick things. There are some chairs over here if you'd like to sit down. And the other thing is, many of you have probably not been to a traffic commission meeting, but what will happen is we are aware of a lot of interesting points that are brought up by the speakers, a lot of ideas, a lot of questions. Our staff is scribbling notes and keeping track of as much of what is asked and brought up as they possibly can. And at the end of the last speaker, they will go through and try and hit all those points that have been brought up, all the questions that have been asked, so that you don't go away unsatisfied. So just so you know, they're busy at work right now. Okay, so next is Robert Geese, and after that is Karen Martin, I hope. Are you Robert?
I'll go. I want to go. How's everybody tonight? We're keeping here late, aren't we? My name's Karen Martin. I'm a veterinarian. Practically live down the street here, East West Veterinarian Clinic. I have lived across from a hill coming down for 3.5 years and living about pile drivers. I know about sound. I live on the corner of Lynn and Jan's, right across from the hospital. My husband and I bought the house 14 years ago, and we looked at it and we went, who'd want to live there? Guess what? We bought it. We love the home. Like everybody else here, very, very similar problems. We had recently a guy come out to look at our property because we wanted to build a pool. It's a flag lot. We've been told we can't put a pool in the front of our property, so we should put it in the back of our property. Our architectural design person said, if you ever want to have a conversation, you can't put a pool here. I can't put an extension on my fence. We bought the house because it was lower than other houses in the neighborhood because of the sound. We talked to the woman who owned it and we said, how do you feel about it? And she's like, honey, most days it doesn't bother me. Some days I want to scream. I can't stand outside in my driveway and talk to people as they're leaving. I have to say goodbye to my family and friends in my home. That's not fair. You know, I look at Dos Vientos. Dos Vientos has a sound wall. Those are $1 million homes. I think the bottom line here is we need to find out who we need to pay or how we need to fund this thing, but it needs to be done. I mean, this is ridiculous. We have noise, which is my big problem. We have busy streets. We have people cutting down Marion and going by the school because they can't get out of Lotus. You see little kids with bags and bicycles. You gotta do something. And I don't know who we need to pay. We need to pay somebody, right? I'm paying my taxes. I get my taxes, and I'm paying for Dos Vientos. Where do we come in? It's not fair. Those houses have been there for a long time. The traffic has changed a lot in that period of time, and something needs to be done. And I'm a newcomer here, and I kind of feel bad about it because I haven't been here before. But they're right. I mean, you guys need to come live our lives. I'd be happy. I have a friend who has a music facility where they tape people and they record music. I can get you sound numbers. And on a Sunday morning when I'm sitting out having a cup of coffee in my yard and somebody comes screaming down the road on a Harley, oh my God, those open pipes, noise. And I can't blame a police officer for not wanting to sit on Lynn Road. I broke down on Lynn Road. Oh my God. Scariest moment of my life. And the police officer, he wouldn't go sit by my vehicle. He's like, come over here. Yeah, 8 o'clock in the morning on Lynn Road. And you can't do it. You're not going to have people out there. I don't want to lose an officer. I respect what these people do. And you're going to get killed if you're sitting out there on a motorcycle trying to stop these people because they don't care. I was at a party the other night, and a lady has a dually. And she goes, I remember when it used to be a one road or a one-lane road. She goes, I can't take my dually down Lynn Road anymore. You know, it's too much traffic. The lanes are already small. Why not cut a road? We're thinking outside the box. Let's go from Wood Ranch to Lang Ranch. Let's cut through there. Let's find other ways to shoot these people around. Let's make new roads. But you can't, I mean, it's growing and it's building, and you know you're going to have to deal with the traffic, so you might as well start looking ahead and start looking for other ways to do it. But I don't see why I should be responsible for building a sound wall because I can't. If I go to the county, or the city, I can't build a sound wall. I can't even go above 6 foot. And it scares the hell out of me that your fish are dying. Think about it, people.
Thank you. Okay, do we want to try Robert one more time? Did he come back?
He did leave, and he filled out a statement card.
Okay, thank you. I want to give everybody a chance. John Gordon, and after that, Denny Brown.
Good evening. My name's John Gordon. I've been a resident of Lynn Ranch for 11 years. Lived in the city of Thousand Oaks since 1968, so I've certainly witnessed some of the changes we've had here on streets like Lynn Road. I live actually basically across the street from the Oaks Mall, so I have a front seat view of the traffic coming down Lynn, approaching Hillcrest and Lynn. And I access my home through Calle Laredo, the first uncontrolled intersection heading north from the Ventura Freeway on Lynn. I want to echo the comments that we've heard from the other citizens here about the imperative need for a traffic signal at this intersection. Even if all of these recommendations are implemented, it will not make this intersection safe. The posted speed limit at this intersection is 45 miles per hour already. And even if people drove that speed limit, which of course we've established they do not, it still would be not be a safe intersection. They've addressed a number of my neighbors have addressed the situation at rush hours in the early morning, people going to work and then people coming home. Traffic has backed up sometimes where you cannot even get across the street. I have timed myself at those times of days trying to get across the street to the other side, And I've sat there literally like this, 5 minutes. And of course, people back up and have to reroute because they're not willing to wait any longer. I've seen, just yesterday, I saw another car simply get impatient waiting on Laredo to enter Lynn Road. And even though there was traffic coming to turn onto Laredo, they just scooted ahead right across. And these of course, are the situations where the accidents happen. My neighbor Nancy here has mentioned how her walls have been taken out repeated times. The Lynn Ranch Homeowners Association in recent years built 2 decorative monument walls at the entrance. And both of those walls have been taken out already on both sides of the street and had to be repaired. So these are the type of things that we see on a daily basis. Also, I think if a traffic light were added, it would actually enhance the safety at Hillcrest Drive, because with the backing up of traffic, actually, let me back up. There's coming southbound on Lynn Road. It is a blind curve approaching Laredo. Cars come flying around there in spite of the posted speed limit at 55 and 60 miles per hour. Even if you're turning right heading southbound onto Lynn, you turn right, you're taking your life into your own hands, because you better hope your engine doesn't stall at the speed that people come around that blind corner, because you don't see them. They're just suddenly appear and they're there. And then I mentioned the safety factor down approaching the Oaks Mall at Hillcrest with the stacking up of traffic all the way up to Laredo. These cars come flying around this blind corner, and sometimes the traffic is backed up so far they don't see it in time, and I've seen rear-end collisions there. And so if we were to slow the traffic down at Laredo, not only improving the safety situation there, I think it actually would enhance the safety situation at Hillcrest Drive as well. So I would really beseech you to look at traffic light installation. I think it is the only measure that will make these intersections, and possibly the other ones that might further up the road, safe. Thank you very much for hearing me.
Thank you. Denny Brown, and then Reza Brown.
I must have written it funny. Nobody's ever called me Denny since I was about this big.
Dennis?
Dennis. Yeah, that's okay. That's all right. Close enough. Hi, I'm Dennis Brown. I've been a resident of Thousand Oaks for since 1978, and most of what I'm going to say, the people said before, so they must be really smart. Number one, there's too many accidents on Lynn. I live just off Lotus. Too many accidents. We need to slow it down. I don't think anybody in this room disagrees with that. Number two, if you can't do it with enforcement and speed limits, desync the signals. Put a signal in at Lotus. Do something to slow it down, and enhance the safety. And thank you for listening to me.
Thank you. Reza Brown, and then April Thomas.
Hi, my name is Risa Brown. Can you hear me? Okay, good. Okay. I live on Ferndale Place. I've backed Lynn Road in the same house for 29 years. Yes, the speed needs to go down. Yes, there are way too many accidents. I have a thought. It says you did a study in 1995 that said that reducing the speed limit didn't change driving patterns. That study's almost 12 years old. I wonder if perhaps if we did the study now, we would find significant changes in driving behavior. And that might be something to file in the back of your minds. What isn't mentioned too often are the unreported collisions, the single car accidents, and even more so the dozens and dozens and dozens every week of near misses. I think everybody in this room who can hear the traffic hears the constant screech and the sound of brakes, grinding, and nothing happens, but it was close, or it certainly necessitated that kind of maneuver. And so I would ask you to, even though it's not on a report, factor that into your findings. Thank you.
Thank you. April Thomas, and then Charles Rovsler, I'm sorry. Are you? There's a Charles here. Come on up.
Hi, I'm April Thomas, and I'm a resident of Lynn Ranch and have been for about 5 years. I'm a secretary on the Lynn Ranch Property Owners Association, so I'm speaking on behalf of them as well. We all agree that the speed is excessive, so I won't go there. Our children are crossing Lynn Road to go to and from school. There's churches, there's parks. I'm too afraid to let my children cross the road, so I take them to school every day. Lynn Road is now, instead of just speed, we have the weight of trucks that are also careening down there. People are late to work. They're drinking their coffee, talking on their cell phones, and it's completely unsafe. We have a lot of traffic accidents concerning our Lynn Ranch block walls that we kind of discussed a little bit. We've had them, they've been hit about 4 times at least in the last 6 months. We've replaced them once. Traffic reports are difficult to come by, so sometimes the residents don't even know who hit them. If you're gone on vacation or something, you don't know, you can't get the traffic reports. And that's been a really serious problem. Block walls are expensive. You know, if you're doing them to code, which you have to, you know, you've got the huge footings and, you know, you're talking $10,000, $15,000. And it's not really fair for our residents who are responsible for their own walls to constantly have to pay for their walls when it's the amount of traffic, the speed of the traffic, and the weight of the traffic that is coming along. If you come out Manzanas onto Lynn Road and turn right, there's the Emmanuel Church there, and shortly thereafter, we don't even have a curb. It's a rolled curb. And one of my brainstorm thoughts is at least something to break the car before it smashes into somebody's wall. God forbid it smashes into Madronia and kills some kid on the field, because there's the field of the school right there. It continues to have a rolled curb all the way to Biola University, I believe. And Nancy's wall has been hit many times. It's still just broken down right now. And there's nothing to save a pedestrian walking on that sidewalk. I do not want my children to go to the mall, although they would like to. It's just a very dangerous situation. You add that with the addition of the enlargement of the hospital and the enlargement of the Oaks Mall, which no one has brought up, and it's, as we all know, is completely out of hand. I'd like to see, besides some of these, I definitely think the making that not a truck route is imperative. I don't think you can schedule times, because there's kids and there's different times that people are using and crossing that road. So I agree with all of that, but I'd like to add curbs and maybe those cement posts or something along the outsides of those sidewalks to prevent cars from careening into our property owners, property or children. Thank you.
Thank you.
I guess I'm the Charles that you couldn't pronounce.
Do you live on Adele?
Yeah.
Perfect.
I scribbled it quickly.
Could you please spell that for us?
Kuenstle. U.S. No, it's R.A. Oh, that's my old Army number. First of all, I want to thank my neighbors for coming out. I think we've had some very articulate arguments. I want to especially thank Lou Worth here, who has done a yeoman job. I mean, this guy has done a fantastic job here. And Lou, come the next election, you want to run for city council? I'm behind you 100%, because I think a lot of this has to do with the control of the city council by a certain sort of commercial group that has run this city. And anyhow, I won't go into that. But This problem has been caused by a bureaucracy that has basically been unresponsive to the people, and I think that needs to change, and we'll see it here. I don't think anything's going to happen. I think, we're just going to go through all the political babble, and it's going to just be the same old story, so what's new? Let me just make some notes here. Before I forget it, I know this is a minor issue, but this is kind of a law enforcement thing. What about the motorcycle noise? Now, I live up on a hill. I'm not right on the street, but, we have I like motorcycles, by the way, but we have a real issue, especially on the weekends, with visiting motorcycles gunning up and down Lynn Road. And, you need to start citing these people. Down in Laguna Beach, they had a problem. They need to start citing these noisy motorbikes. This is, it's just a major thing. I mean, it's an in-your-face kind of noise that needs to be contained. We spend millions in this state for walls, sound walls on the freeways. But yet, every weekend we have the roar of the motorcycles going down the freeway, and it's an issue, I think, that needs to be taken care of. Let me see here. So what's the problem? The problem is a bureaucracy that's not going to respond. It's the same old thing. They are just not going to respond to this issue. I hope I'm wrong, but I've lived here for 35 years. I know how the good old boy system works. It's pathetic. It's commerciality first, not people. I like the idea of the toll road. I don't know who that was, but that was a terrific idea. Let's make it a toll road. And I think Rick Lemo and the Chamber of Commerce how to get behind that. I think that's kind of one of their things that they would enjoy. There's a couple other things that, excuse me, I'm not organized. It's a safety thing. This is a safety issue. Safety overrides everything. We've had people here. This lady lives in Lynn Road. I live on the other side of Lynn Road. Those kids that walk from Lynn Road across to Redwood, I mean, that's dangerous. That's a disaster waiting to happen. Now, the bureaucrats that sit up here in City Hall and pull down all the, their big payrolls and their big paychecks, they don't understand that. I guess they don't understand it because this is a problem that's been around for a long, long time. I nearly got killed on there. Some guy pulled out of me in a blind corner about 3 years ago. I called my friend Andy Fox and Dennis Gillette. Lip service. Well, yeah, we know it's a problem. Then we got this Goulet thing. You had George Calavos and my friend here, Lou Worth, get up here and explain to you that Goulet thing is just it's a joke. It's a bureaucratic double talk boondoggle. You can do something. And why don't you do something? It's pathetic. These are safety issues. This Lynn Road is not designed for a freeway. We've got blind corners. The guy that was just up talking about Laredo. I mean, I've hit people coming out of Laredo. That's a blind corner. This is an issue that needs to be dealt with. And I think if it isn't dealt with, it's negligent on the part of the city, and I think they're opening them up for a lot of legal action by people that are injured and hurt on that freeway. And I think you ought to keep that in mind. Thank you.
Okay. John Williams and then Al Saib.
Hi, I'm John Williams. Been in Thousand Oaks, Ferndale Place for 26 years. Excuse me, out of breath here. As a perspective, the city has done a good job in keeping this place an open space, area free of overdevelopment, and they've stayed on top of it, I think. Traffic along Lynn Road is the same kind of thing, but we have not stayed on top of it. We've done tons of studies, and as Mr. Worth pointed out, 2 years is too long. I witnessed an injury accident several years ago right on Lynn Road, just right across my house. I think his recommendations, I would say the first is lower the speed limit, take charge of our city. I think this Goulet thing is a cop-out. I'm sorry to speak so strongly, but I think it's an excuse that we're using to A, maybe get grants, or B, just leave things the way they are for convenience. And the other thing I think are needed are the traffic lights at Lotus that and Laredo that have been spoken of. The thing that I see happening here is this city may be sliding down towards another San Fernando Valley bureaucratically because City Hall refuses to listen to the citizenry, the good citizens who have gone at this thing very scientifically and have used facts to back up our aggregate position. And I think it's time now to take action. And I don't think we need a study to put in a light at Lotus or a light at Laredo. I think Lynn Road is, as was spoken before, is a disaster waiting to happen, and I hate to see that make the price of a life to pay for for administrative action. And I guess that's about all I got to say. Thank you.
Al Saib and then Suzanne Duckett.
Hi, I know it's getting kind of late, and I just wanted to echo what a lot of people have all pointed out, but a couple of things that perhaps haven't been thought of. I'm in support of trying to lower the speed limit, and also in support of the light situation, because that appears to be something we have more control over, considering the Goulet situation. And perhaps at Lotus and or at Laredo, an on-demand light, as they have at Portofino, which would be a light that would stay green unless there's a need for it to change. And I don't know if this is the right time to address it or not, but it also may go hand in hand with the fact that access for pedestrians or bicycles along Lynn Road, as many people have said, is just too dangerous and is prohibitive for people to even try to do it. And if that could be incorporated with, you had a great idea with perhaps posts or something there to prohibit cars from going off that rolled curb, or something along those lines. But it seems like there's a very dangerous situation there, and it'd be great to tie all this action and make it really a viable roadway for us to use. And the other things I mentioned, a lot of people had left at the last meeting, that I consider one of the aspects of traffic coming through Lynn Ranch North to Lotus due to the increased population of students at Madronia. Over the years, we've lived in Lynn Ranch North for almost 20 years now, and that student population has increased, I think, due a lot to Rancho Conejo and people coming off of Lynn Road into that area. So that, the increase in population at the hospital, and then I didn't even think about the mall expansion. So all those things have to be addressed and relative to Lynn Road, and really you've got a real huge issue here that I hope you guys can address quickly rather than delaying it, because I think action needs to be taken real soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Suzanne Duckett, you are our last speaker until we have the rebuttal speaker.
Good evening. Suzanne Duckett, and I live on Campbell. I want to thank you for doing a good job on Camino Manzanas in Gainsborough. What you've done for us there in our on our streets have improved the traffic. So I know that you can do something on Lynn Road. Even though the bureaucrats sitting over there are going to tell you you can't, I know that there are solutions. And the solution is obviously to lower the speed limit on Lynn Road. I would like to urge all of you sitting out here who want the speed limit lowered to just lower it yourself, which is what I'm doing. And after tonight's meeting, I'm going to even lower it even more. I've tried to go 40 in the fast lane. So after tonight, I'm going to really make an attempt to go 30 in the fast lane. Now, if we all do this, we can get the speed limit lowered tonight. Now, this Goulet rule, I don't know what the big deal about the Goulet rule is, supposedly, because just because they tell you the Goulet rule is important. Up north, on a commercial road, Page Mill Road in Palo Alto, the speed limit is either 30 or 35. And that road is very similar to Lynn Road, except they have commercial buildings on Page Mill, where we have homes on Lynn Road. So the speed limit thing of what it's set at now is ridiculous. I would like to see the speed limit lowered to like 30 or 35 on Lynn Road. Lowering it 5 miles per hour is ridiculous. It has to be lowered at least 10. Then, after it's lowered to 10, then I want you to do your studies. I agree with the lady who has the dead fish pond. I think she made the most points that I agree with. If they have lower speed limits up north, we can have lower speed limits down south and in this city. I don't care about the police with their radar guns because Lynn Road is not a safe place in this area to have police doing radar. I could count on this finger, this hand, these fingers, as many times as I've seen a police on Lynn Road. And pulling people over on Lynn Road is not safe. So that's ridiculous. So what these people over here are telling you why that can't be lowered is a ridiculous rule that should not be applied here in this area of Lynn Road. I think that's about it, except for the trucks. One day I saw a truck taking Lynn Road and turning to go down the Norwegian grade. And this was an 18-wheeler. Now that's ridiculous and totally unsafe. So if you're directing traffic to go Lynn Road to the Norwegian grade, which is a truck route, it's ridiculous. And shame on all you people over there that are making all these rules. So what I'm asking everybody here tonight to do is to start driving really slow on Lynn Road, which is what I'm going to start doing tonight. It's going to be 35 miles an hour. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Worth, you have 5 minutes again.
Thank you. In reference to the fish pond lady, there is, I don't remember your name. There is an alternative that was brought up to lower the speed limit. It was brought up in the ad hoc committee, but it was not held in favor and for some kind of concerns. I don't know what they were. And it's very simply that the city council has the statutory authority to lower speed limits on its own. It can set the speed, whatever it is. It can just say, thou shalt be 40 miles an hour. Okay, there's a penalty that Mr. Mashiko alluded to. The penalty, I believe, you can still shoot radar on those areas that you've arbitrarily lowered, but you cannot take it into court. So this is a doable thing. It's workable. It's been discussed intensively in our ad hoc committee. It's a workable way of doing it. Okay, just one point. Second point, in terms of signal lights, the traffic department has already done their preliminary work on the 3 signal lights in question, and they've proclaimed that they don't fit the characteristics. They don't have enough stop things, or they don't have enough cars going through or something like that. The question I have for them, and I would kind of like to have it answered, is exactly what will it take? How many more tests do you perform? What are the tests? Exactly what will it take to get them to authorize, to recommend putting these signal lights in. Obviously, a lot of people want them. And as other people said, sometimes it's got to be time for the citizens. It can't just be time for, let's make the roads go fast, let's make the cars go fast, let's worry about that. It's got to be time for the citizens. All right, back to the truck traffic. I'll remind you what I said before. In 2001, and it's in your book, this is what they had to say about lowering taking the truck designations off 7 streets, okay, which is what they did. They said, these revisions are administrative and routine in nature. There's not all kinds of complicated things and requiring all kinds of study. I don't know where this is coming from. It's a bunch of bunk, all due respect stated. It's a bunch of bunk. I'll give you an example. They said $50,000 for an EIR report, environmental impact report. Well, Public Resources Code 21100 says all lead agencies shall prepare an environmental impact report on any project which they propose to carry out that may have a significant effect on the environment. Now, by taking a couple of hundred trucks a day off of Lynn Road, is that going to negatively impact on the environment on Lynn Road? I don't think so. And as a matter of fact, it does mention one thing on a state road where you're supposed to consider doing an environmental impact report. Lynn Road is not a state road, it's a city road. Also, they mention having to consider alternative routes, and the trouble with putting all these trucks on Moorpark and Herbs and everything like that, there is an alternative road to Lynn Road. It's called the 23 Freeway, okay? Secondly, the law says, CVC 35702, I feel like I'm in church, says prohibiting trucks on a state highway requires an alternative road. On a state highway. Doesn't say anything about, I've done a lot of work on this, doesn't say anything about a city road. You don't need an alternative highway. You want to put one on there, like I said, 23. Bless you. Okay. Again, I've researched this very carefully. And I would suggest to the people here, look on pages 97 in that area. It tells you exactly what they did. You don't have to do it now, but please do it. It tells you exactly what they did back in 2002 to reduce the 7 streets down. Okay? No biggie. No biggie. All I could find, like I said before, the most they have to do is to hold a public hearing and give notice to people, give them the opportunity of voicing their opinions. It's done. Okay? It's all done. So there's no, I would like to have them say exactly what they have to do before the truck route, before you can recommend that the truck route be undesignated. I don't get it. I don't buy their list of things on there. It's just not true. Not that I can see. I got to emphasize that these things are doable. They really are. I really would like to hear what the big deal is about putting streetlights in. And not, well, it's not in the master plan, you know. Well, master plan be whatever, you know. We need signal lights. Talk to these folks. Talk to the 2 groups of people that collected petitions. What more do you need to do? Go out and, one of the things that I heard they have to do is knock on the doors. Well, already knocked on the doors, okay? So please, 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 don't put this stuff off. There's no need for it. There's no justification for it. Let's do it. Let's do it now. That's all I got.
Thank you. At this time, we're going to take a 5-minute break, and then we'll come back. We'll hear from the staff. We'll have some discussion. The public meeting is closed, which means public comments from you are done. You're obviously welcome to come back and listen to us. But we are going to take a 5-minute break. Welcome back. At this point, we're going to spring it on Sergeant Kenny. I think that there was so much confusion about the Goulet decision and the ramifications of using radar and not using radar and writing tickets and all that stuff that happens in court. And I think that we need you to talk some more, if you don't mind.
There were a couple comments that were made regarding whether people unsafe speed, and yes, we do a lot of traffic enforcement as far as unsafe speed goes in the city of Thousand Oaks. So people do speed. I want to make that clear. When we talk about one of the comments that was made was, and I believe was by Mr. Worth, that if they lowered the speed limit down to 40 and we still used radar or laser to enforce the speed limit, but if the person took us to court, then we would have to dismiss it because, well, we knew that we legally didn't have the right to use radar or laser. In other words, we know that by vehicle code that would be considered a speed trap. We would have some other issues with what we call an unlawful detention of people if we know that the devices or what we're using is in violation of the vehicle code. So as much as we may like to use radar or laser to enforce speed limits that are not Goulet compliant, we would not do that for that particular reason. As far as Goulet goes, like I said, we in law enforcement use the tools that we are given in order to enforce the laws that are in place. Sometimes those laws are in the vehicle code, sometimes those laws are court decisions that are handed down. How the traffic and engineers come to the decision of what the 85th percentile is, what the posted speed limit is not one of our greater concerns. Our concern is it compliant with the law, both the vehicle code and any case law, and will it enable us to effectively enforce the law? And when I say effectively, be able to go into court, testify, and have the judge rule, and a majority of the time, that we are enforcing the law correctly. In the case of Lynn Road, I think people have a misperception a little bit of whether we do enforcement on that road or not. There's been significant amount of talk about the motorcycle staging areas and how it's dangerous. And to be quite frank, it is very dangerous on that road. There are some safe places for us to do enforcement, and that's where we put our motorcycles. Mr. Worth pointed out, well, why aren't we more visible? Why aren't we sitting out in the middle of the roadway? Because what we have found is that people will slow down for the short distance that they see the police car, they see the police motorcycle, but as soon as they are out of our sight, they will then increase their speed to whatever it was originally, and there's no consequences for their action. And that's part of the reasons why we take a less obvious approach, because we do want to catch the people that are actually speeding, and we do want to hold them accountable by issuing them citations and having them that type of financial, consequence, plus the 1 point they get against their driver's license. There are places where we do. I can tell you that I hate to give away my spot, but I'm at Lynn and Portofino almost on a daily basis writing tickets there, both for northbound and for southbound vehicles. So I know, and I have encouraged the other motors that I'm in charge of to do radar enforcement and laser enforcement on that section of roadway. Where it's safe, they're there. The reason you don't see us, because most of the time when we conduct our traffic stops, it's not on Lynn Road. It's on Camino Manzanas. It's on Lotus. It's on Jan's Road. It's on other side streets where we have a safe place for the vehicles to pull over so we don't get run into while we're busy doing our traffic stops. So I don't know if I've clarified that, if I've articulated that enough. If not, I have more answers to more questions.
That sounds great, but don't go away.
I'll be right back.
All right. And now maybe staff can address some of the concerns that were brought up. Okay. Thank you.
I'm Jay Spurgeon. I'm the Deputy Public Works Director. Obviously, John Helliwell, our engineering traffic division manager, and Jim Mashiko, our senior traffic engineer, have a lot more expertise in this, in many of the details and technicalities of this. But let me just take a couple minutes and try and step back and look at this from maybe a little bigger perspective. There was a lot of discussion about all of these issues at the ad hoc committee meetings, and I attended most of those, and our director, our Public Works Director, Mark Watkins, also attended many of those. And I just want you to know that we, as staff, and I can speak for myself personally, I agree that the speed on Lynn Road is too high. I mean, there's too much traffic. The speeds are high. There may be too many trucks. I don't know. They're relative to some of the other streets in town. That may not be the case, but the trucks definitely have an impact there. And there's some real safety issues on Lynn Road. We would like to lower the speed limit. In fact, the city, this whole Goulet case, which occurred 10 years or so ago, the impact of that has been felt on Lynn Road. It's been felt on a number of other roads in town, and we've been frustrated as well with the limitations that were placed on us by that court decision, and so the city, Thousand Oaks, one little city in the state. We took it upon ourselves several years ago to try and introduce legislation at the state level that would give the city more flexibility, clear additional guidelines to be able, in a case like Lynn Road, to be able to lower the speed limits without having the difficulties that we've experienced. One thing I will say is that some of the details of the law that Mr. Worth and others have pointed out, we're very aware of those, of course, and we do apply those everywhere that we can. But one of the factors that really it's not in the law, it's not really even an engineering issue, is what the traffic judge in our locality decides that the law means. And in this case, our traffic judge has decided that many of these unusual conditions just don't apply to Lynn Road. We may not agree with that, and I know Mr. Worth and other of the residents don't agree with that. And but that doesn't matter. I mean, the judge makes the decision, and our city attorney's office, as well as other experts in the police department, have provided us with some guidance on how to do that. And so I also want to point out what our role is as staff to you as the commission. Our role is to give you recommendations based on what we believe are sound engineering principles. We use our experience, our judgment, our training, and also the interpretation of some of these laws, like the Goulet case, the vehicle code, that are given to us by our city attorney's office and by, again, experts in the police department. So from that perspective, that's what we've done, and our recommendations are based on that. Now that's where it starts. Then of course it comes to you as the commission, and you can deliberate and use those recommendations as well as what you've heard from the public, and you should consider everything and then make your decisions. We can provide a lot more detailed answers to any of the issues or any of the comments that came up. I think that issues such as are signals warranted at some of these intersections, we've done the traffic signal analysis, and the warrants aren't met. And again, these are state guidelines that we try to follow. De-designating Lynn Road as a truck route is certainly within the purview of the city. All we're saying is, and we don't necessarily say we shouldn't do that, what we're saying is that before we do that, we do have to consider the impacts of that decision on other streets and other residents in the city. And that's why, in the opinion of our environmental experts in our community development department, that an environmental review does need to be done. What we did several years ago was more of a cleanup action, where we had segments that we had a truck route coming to here and then up to here, and this piece was out, and that needed to be designated. We had little fingers that were designated as truck routes that didn't go anywhere. We de-designated those. There were street name changes. That's kind of what was done several years ago. So it was administrative in nature, as Mr. Worth pointed out. Yes, it was. This is a little different. If you de-designate Linden Road, those trucks will go somewhere else. And there are residents that also live and back up to many of those other streets. So that's all we're saying, is that needs to be considered, and it needs to be considered in the proper process, which would be an environmental review. Desyncing the signals is also, certainly that can be done. That could be done in a manner that does slow traffic. The impacts of that decision also need to be considered, such as how much congestion will be increased, and what happens to, again, other city streets, adjacent local residential streets of Lynn Road, as people start to become frustrated and try to get around those things. There's air quality issues there, because when you start and stop, that actually creates more air pollution than vehicles traveling through, even at a higher speed. And also the noise impacts of stopping and starting. A frustrated driver after a light turns green may accelerate faster than normal, and there may actually be some unanticipated consequences to doing that kind of thing. Again, we're not necessarily saying that's not something that can be done, but everything really needs to be considered in total. Again, we can certainly go back and address any of the specific issues or comments that were made by the residents. But hopefully that that kind of gives maybe a little more of an overview of kind of where we're coming from on this issue. Thanks.
Can you hear this mic now? Can you hear? Okay, good. Thank you very much. That was great. Did Mr. Helliwell or Mr. Mashiko, did you have anything that you wanted to add at this time? Okay, terrific. Do we have any questions of staff? Commissioner.
There was the gridlock situation at Lotus and Lynn. I drive by it every day, so you would think that I might know this, but are there keep clear signs, and and there is a gridlock law. Does it apply when it's an unregulated intersection as that is? And how difficult would it be to paint, keep clear so that there is a way for those people to get out in the mornings? Because it is stacked up traffic.
Yes, the anti-gridlock law, or the no blocking of intersections, is enforced whether the intersection is marked or not. And there are 2 or 3 intersections in town that have been marked, do not block.
Thank you.
I'm assuming you want just questions and not comments or anything yet, right? I have a kind of a theoretical question. If you were to sort of think outside the box and get out of process, is it possible to put in temporary measures on a road such as Lynn that you would designate a laundry list of temporary things you want to do strictly during the construction schedule on the 23 freeway? Is that legal?
You're saying to implement some traffic control measures which would last for a certain period of time and then they would be removed?
They would last for a certain period of time. I guess I wouldn't want to say that they would be removed, but if you said something like, due to the anticipated traffic we expect during the construction period on the 23 freeway, we're going to do the following. And at the end of that construction period, we'll take a look at whether those measures have worked and whether they become permanent. It's almost like an experiment, for a better term. But you have a reason for doing it, and whether it be, and I guess what I'm really asking is whether it be speed limit that doesn't follow to the letter of Goulet, whether it be traffic calming or slowing methods that may or may not work, a laundry list of things. Without being specific, just for the sake of our discussion tonight, could you do something like that as a safety measure for the safety of our citizens during the construction of the 23 freeway, and making a decision whether or not they become permanent, because you can then evaluate them by the time the 23 freeway construction is finished? That's really the essence of what I'm asking.
In the past, that approach has been taken, but it depends on the type of traffic control device. We wouldn't want to do something and then get people used to it and then take it away because some other factor happened. So it would have to take an evaluation. We couldn't say in general terms that, yes, you can do this all the time, but trying to think of an example. I know that when the Ventura Freeway was widened the first time, Ventura Freeway, it was about 20-some years ago, there was a diverted traffic off the freeway, and they went on Newberry Road. They went on through Green Meadow Avenue to get to Lynn, and they were diverting off the freeway, and they did a temporary measure where they actually blocked Green Meadow Road and closed the road so that there was no through access, and with the understanding that when the freeway was widened, that this closure would then open up.
Yeah, and I guess the only thing I didn't want to head that far down the road is to say that, while you're going to have evaluation at the end of that period of time when the freeway is open back up, the decision might be made to extend those measures within the legal limits of state law, whatever measures they might be. If you find out that for that 2-year period that the freeway is under construction, things really got better and things really got safer, then I would say that at that point in time, we all go back and try and lobby and do whatever necessary to make those temporary changes permanent. But that's even going too far down the road. I'm just asking, so it can be done. It's been done before, and it could be done within certain parameters.
It could be. Not necessarily something that traffic engineers would recommend, because usually when a traffic control device is installed, it usually is a permanent device and stays there.
Well, as you know, there is ignorance and there is bliss in ignorance.
Thank you. Are there any other questions for staff? Okay, at this time, it's time for discussion. Who wants to start? Commissioner Lemo?
I'd like to first start our discussion with a few comments. I will try and make them as brief as I can, but I think they're very important, and they don't directly have to do with the situation on Lynn. I think the majority of the comments we heard tonight were very, very good, but there were a percentage of them that I think we need to I need to address directly, and they have to do with city staff. It is really easy to pick the easiest punching bag and go after that first. And I just think from my perspective, and I'm not speaking for any of the other commissioners, when that is part of someone's presentation, in my opinion, it loses credibility for the overall cause. And I only know that from personal experience because I have really looked at staff very toughly over the last 18 years, and I'm pleasantly surprised to see that in 95% of the situations I was totally wrong, and the other 5 I just figured, why make it 100%? Don't go into it. I think our city staff does a very good job, and remember that a lot of what they're guided by, which I don't necessarily agree with, but it's what they're guided by, is liability for the city because of what has come down the pike from the state. We should never lose sight of that. There was a gentleman up there really, kind of poking fun at council and poking fun at city staff and the Good Old Boy Network. And the fact of the matter is, if you really feel that way, you need to change things on a state basis, because that's what's being handed down. And that's what our city staff is trying desperately to protect us from. And my experience has shown that whenever the private sector tries their best to hire staff away, we find that staff's not enjoying great big paychecks and sitting there enjoying themselves. They're finding a whole new life in the private sector where it's not a paycheck to paycheck living. So I just wanted to sort of start off with that. I believe that more so than anything else regarding the proposal that's before us tonight, urgency and immediacy has to be the first thing. I think the specifics of what has to take place becomes a little secondary. So what I would hope we can do is, when we decide what we're going to recommend to council, the first element of what we recommend to city council is somewhat of a hard, fast timeline with some benchmarks, so that we can all agree that even if we don't agree on what elements we're going to use, we can all agree on when we're going to measure initial progress. Go to any successful business, and if there's not a timeline involved with a goal, the goal never happens. It just drags on and on and on. I know that when you're involved with a situation, the immediacy is there for you, and we've got to make it immediate for everybody else. This traffic commission has had to deal with some issues that have been studied and on the books for 14 years. So relatively speaking, the 8 months, I think it's good that we're attacking it and we're going to get a schedule with it, but I don't think that there's really been a dragging of feet. I would like to have some things as soon as possible, maybe as early as next week or as quickly as it can be done. Have some things go directly to our city attorney to give us a definitive opinion on. The first one is a speed reduction. I think that we have to live with what our city attorney tells us. And so I would like to see something definitive on speed reduction. And I'd like to treat him like I would treat any other attorney and say, tell me how far I can go. What can I do legally without putting the city at risk as soon as possible? I'm a person who believes in, as immediately as possible, de-designate the truck route. I think it was a mistaken statement tonight when someone said you don't need an environmental study of some sort. The state law is very clear, and believe me, I spend a significant amount of my time understanding why we have to do EIRs. The state law is very clear. They don't care if it's a negative impact or a positive impact. If there is any change or impact on the environment, if you were to clean all the air or have a proposal to clean all the air on Lynn Road, you could not do it in the state of California without an environmental impact study of some sort. That is the law. So whether it's a mitigated negative declaration or an addendum to an existing study. Some amount of study has to take place. And it's usually an independent firm that's hired by the city to do that. But I do believe that as soon as possible, I would almost say, act now and ask for permission later to de-designate the truck route, because I think that there are alternative routes. You have to go through certain notification and study and public hearing with other people, but as quickly as possible, because Lynn Road doesn't seem to be a good place. And I can tell you this, weight limitations do not work. I happen to live on off a portion of Lynn Road that has been designated for certain weight limitations, and I would say that I've never had a day where I've counted less than 3 trucks, 18-wheelers, that absolutely ignore what the weight limitations are. So I believe de-designate it as a truck route. I think that is realistic. One of the citizens had suggested that an on-demand light system might be considered for Lotus and Laredo. And I think that that's a good idea to take a hard look at. I believe it should be on demand, just like the light is here on Thousand Oaks Boulevard, between the Civic Arts Plaza and the lakes, where it's not just on demand for cars, it's on demand for a pedestrian. And I think that would be safe. And while I think the toll road was great out of the box thinking, I think if we had that on a fast track, we could probably accomplish that in 25 to 30 years in this state. And it may take 10 years just to study the financial impacts of that, which are also part of an environmental study. I do think that some out-of-the-box thinking, which has been done before, so it's not as out of the box as I originally thought it was, might be to handle this in 2 pieces. I think that you can't eat the whole cow at one time. I think what we should probably consider is, okay, let's come up with a long-term plan that is really our plan B. Let's come up with a short-term plan that gives us a fix, and our reasoning for it, if you understand where I'm going with this, our reasoning for it is because of what we're anticipating, what we have now, and what we're anticipating an increased impact because of the construction on the 23 freeway. So it's almost like an emergency decision that we make in this city. And I believe that people get into habits. And so when you make traveling on Lynn Road inconvenient for the people who don't live here that are just shuttling through, they will find another way. And they're not going to break that habit after they learn it for 2 years. So those are my suggestions. And the most important, I think, I'd like us to have is some level of urgency and immediacy to come away with a timeline on what we expect to accomplish and get those recommendations to council as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner?
First, let me say that I have children at Madronia and Redwood, and so I do drive this corridor daily. And I'm concerned about light at Lotus and Lynn. Many people, including me, do turn right on Lotus and go down Marion to Madronia Elementary School. The good news is the attendance at Madronia is down 100 in the last 3 years, and it is not ever expected to go back up into the 750 range where it was 3 years ago when it was particularly terrible. I mean, down 100 is a lot. It's still a very crowded, it's still a very large school. But I fear that a light, when it's red, those parents will still turn right and use Lotus and Marion even more. With the some kind of light at Laredo and Lynn, having lived in Lynn Ranch most of my life, it is common practice to dash in at Laredo to travel up Caliyucca to avoid the lights at Gainesboro and Manzanas, no matter almost where you live in Lynn Ranch, whether you live up at the far end by Cali Salto or in the south end of Lynn Ranch. Most people dash in at Laredo to avoid having to wait at the lights. So I can see where that is a big impact on those people at that intersection. In the mornings, I'm like with everybody else. It's just not going anywhere. It's gridlock. I am concerned about anything that will increase that congestion. Adding on-demand lights at Lotus, that cars could come there, every 15 minutes or every 5 minutes and turn that light on, and we're just going to have worse gridlock on what should be a road that an ambulance can get to the hospital on. It is a thoroughfare, and I think we have to be cautious about adding extra congestion to a road that already is at gridlock. The speeds concern me coming over the hill from between Manzanas to Jan's Road. You do come up over that hill if you're traveling at the speed limit during a time when that light is red at Jan's, you can get into some real trouble because those cars are stopped a lot sooner than you think, and then I have to make that fancy S to go left on Jan's, and it's a difficult thing to do at the speeds, and so I don't do it at 50 miles an hour. I agree with Commissioner Lemo that this needs to be treated with some urgency. It is a terrible situation. I would like to see the homeowners have a little bit more control of their own destinies in looking at a variance, recommending to council a variance for homeowners to be able to have some more or less rigid rules about building sound walls to protect their own lifestyles in their own yards. And that is certainly something that I would like to see some work on. But I'll wait to hear from my fellow commissioners.
Did you have any comments at this point?
I guess I do. As the newcomer to the group here, I too live off of Lynn Road, not on that side, but I drive that stretch of roadway, and I know that the speeds are what I would consider unsafe. I have 2 teenage drivers, one of whom was involved in an accident at Lotus and Lynn. So I'm certainly aware of the potential pitfalls there. I would have to echo some of the same comments that my fellow commissioners have made. I can say that now, can I? Yes. Okay. I think that the sound wall issue is something that the homeowners should be allowed to do, particularly if it's at their own expense. Recognizing also that if it costs $10,000 to $15,000 to repair a 6-foot wall, it's probably going to cost a little bit more to repair it if it's 10 feet high. So I would be in favor of also putting some sort of other barriers there that would keep the traffic from running off the roadway. Although I also recognize that creates some other problems. I have a background in law enforcement. I've been involved in it for 27 years, so it might be a good thing to have a car run off the roadway, because then you don't have other cars stacking up into it and causing potentially significantly more damage. It's just something to consider. So I'm certainly in favor of lowering the speed limits, if at all possible. I'm also sensitive to the issues involved with shooting radar and LiDAR or laser. And you need to be able to control the traffic there, and you need to be able to enforce the traffic there. So I think we need to reach some sort of a balance there. I think that's all I have to say.
I would like to make a comment about this whole Goulet thing. I was at that committee. I was at all the meetings as a representative of this board, as was Commissioner McDonald, who had to leave because he had a more personal concern. He lived right on Lynn Road, and he was terribly affected by it, as all of you are. What I took away from the committee meeting was very different than what Mr. Worth took away and what Mr. and Mrs. Kaluvos took away. It was my understanding that the city and law enforcement had done everything they could to reduce the speeds. They felt that they had reached a dead end, and what we were trying to do as a committee was find a way to change driver behavior, to get the drivers through all these other methods that are listed up here to slow down. And once these drivers had slowed down, we could take the traffic measurements again, and the 85th percentile would be lower. And once you have those measurements of slower drivers, then you can put in the new speed limits, the lower speed limits. And that's what I took away from this committee, that first we had to get the drivers to slow down, then we could lower the speed limits. We can't do it the other way around because there's no enforcement. And if you're a driver and you know you can get away with something, you're going to do it. So on that note, I want to see most of this done as soon as possible. Let's get these drivers to alter their behavior. I love the idea of the barriers, especially on the corners where the kids are. I like that idea. I want to add a couple things into the record. We were handed, I think it's 6 pages of petition. Most of these pages have 10 signatures on them, and they were for a light at Lotus and Lynn. But we were just handed them tonight. The city hasn't had a chance to analyze them, go through the signatures, see if they're residents, and et cetera like that. But I just wanted people to be aware of that. We also had a number of statement cards. We had 3 statement cards that did not say whether they were for or against the recommendation. We had 11 that were for the recommendation. We had 1 that was against traffic signals, and we had 2 that were for more traffic signals. So the statements have been heard. If anybody wants to read them, we have them here. And at this point, I guess we can have some more discussion. No, Commissioner?
Probably, Jay, this might be better for you since it's not traffic related. The variance on the sound walls. What, I know there's some pretty strict codes on how tall the walls can be. Can we have a variance such that it's less restrictive? Knowing that, everybody on council, everyone knows that Lynn Road is a mess. I think we've all addressed that it's too fast. We'd like it to be slower. It's noisy. So can we give these citizens some relief if they're willing to pay for it by at least allowing them to improve their lifestyle?
Yeah, that's an excellent question, and I think what you could do, if you all agree, is add to the action plan a recommendation that the City Council direct the Community Development Department to address that issue, because that is a building code. It's not a public works issue per se. Adding, maybe allowing variances up to 8 feet or whatever that might be, depending on the location and whatnot. It makes sense to me too. It is, however, a planning issue, and maybe that would be the appropriate way to address that if you all agree to that. I would mention that it's not just as straightforward as you might think that you could just add 2 feet of block on top of an existing 6-foot wall. I don't want the residents to think that that's the answer, because you have footings and you have structural issues there that it may require rebuilding the entire wall. But clearly, having planning department look at a variance along Lynn Road and other roads like that, it makes sense to me.
Thank you. Yeah, and there are parts along Lynn Road where, from Madronia School to Gainsborough, where there's a horse trail between the, not that provides any sound barrier or anything, it's just an empty space. But no, I think the residents recognize that they would have to rebuild these walls, and it would be a tremendous expense, but I think they should at least have it as an option.
Commissioner Lemo?
I don't know if we're ready to start adding on to or customizing the recommendations a little, but one of the things I'd like to be able to do, not in the form of study or taking extra time, but would be to maybe come up with a subcommittee of the commission of 1 or 2 members that would sit down with city staff and the city attorney's office to examine just how wide we can open the envelope, either on a temporary basis because of the construction on the 23, or on a permanent basis because we believe that there has been more than enough study and we want to go forward with it. But just to have our own city attorney who has to defend us, to have as strict of parameters for us as we can and as loose a look at things as we could take. So whether it's in regards to putting in some measures that are there because of the 23 freeway construction, further defining the interpretation of Goulet and how that parameter can be stretched, if at all, and I'm not certain that it can be. So to be able to also help staff, because I know we can't really accomplish that tonight, help staff come back with a recommendation to us, or for us just to get a timeline set, notify us by email or whatever, that here is the most aggressive timeline we can have for the following items to take place, whether it be, fashioning specifics to take to council, getting things, if council recommends a signal get put in, exactly what period of time it takes to fabricate that signal and get it installed, virtually every little step along the way, so that the very least people go away with tonight is knowing that by a date certain, they're going to have a laundry list with timelines next to it of exactly what's going to take place. And that, more so than in just discussion, we have an urgent action plan that we're going to solve. I can't tell you that it's not going to take, 18 months to 2 years to accomplish everything. I know it takes about a year just to fabricate a traffic signal. That's the manufacturing. There's nothing you can do about that. But at least we have a date certain. So I'd like to try and add those things on to the city's staff's recommendations.
I don't know if we need a subcommittee. I think what we need to do is go through this list and go through any additional items and make them each item ASAP. And then the city can work on them, and they can come back to us and say, okay, we're working on this, and ASAP for this item will be now, and ASAP for this item will be now, and ASAP for this item will be now, but we don't need to.
Well, no, I agree with you. The subcommittee had nothing to do with the recommendations other than to find out in a manner that we would ask with a staff member to deal with the city attorney only and find out just how wide we can spread the envelope. It had nothing to do with recommendations. It was, okay, what are we able to get away with on speed? If you stretch the law, whether you stretch the law on an emergency basis because we've got construction going on, that's all it was. It was a member or two of this committee to join staff and sit with the city attorney and then come back and say, here's what we found out. This is definitive. This is as far as we can stretch things without being too safe and probably being very aggressive. That was my only suggestion for that.
My understanding is that has been done. They have pushed it and pushed it and pushed it as far as going to the state to try and rewrite the law, as far as trying to change. It was explained to us in this committee that they went and they reworded some of these the forms that they were filling out on the study. They threw in as many descriptive words as they could think of that maybe would pass the judge's inspection, as far as, okay, this is an exception, and so this will make it reasonable. And they worked at it and worked at it and worked at it. I think it's been
It
done
seems,
to death.
I there's no doubt that you're correct about that. I just am obviously not communicating very well. What I mean is not in the traditional parameters. Here we sit, one little community. There's probably 6 communities affected in some way, shape, or form by the construction on the 23 freeway. City attorney, what am I legally allowed to do as a sovereign city that says, I am going to take some measures. I know what the rules are for everyday life, particularly in regards to Goulet. But I need to take some extraordinary measures because the community is being seriously and negatively impacted by the construction that is funded by the state and federal government on the 23 freeway. What are we allowed to do? Short-term powers of the city to stretch that envelope in regards to that. Like I said, I think we have to back into it a different way. I think out of the box thinking has to be, okay, what can we do independently as a city? We know, you're absolutely right, we can't do anything about Goulet. No matter what our opinions are, the interpretation for Goulet is set. Now, guys, we can beat that horse till we're both blue, but it makes no difference. The legal opinion that the city is going to use has been set. What I'm trying to do is not argue to see who's the best litigant. That makes no sense. That accomplishes nothing. What I'm trying to do is say, how can we get what we want within the limits of the law? And that's what I mean by using what's going on the 23 freeway as something that has raised our level of our lack of safety to a new level. That what can we do short term? So that's what I meant with visiting with the city attorney about.
Okay. Can we set that aside for right this moment, and can we work off this list and add to the list, and then maybe within the list we can incorporate that? How does that sound?
Fine, thank you.
Okay. Well, then let's start with item number 1. Oh, okay.
In the packet, I was tickled because I've always asked about it, that the radar signs that we were looking at installed, that they are actually going to collect the data. Is that correct, or is that what you were recommending? When I was reading it, it said that it would collect the data, and that's what I'd always asked about, is do those signs actually collect anything, or do they just put a number up? Did I read it wrong? Does it collect data?
Yes, there's a model that does collect data, and there's other types that do not. So we'll get the one with the feature that we want.
Don't spend a ton of money just to thrill me, but I do think it would be. I do think it's important to have them collect data while we're going through this process. Because if people aren't slowing down at all, then we'll know right away that we need to try something else.
Just one quick question: are those permanent or temporary?
They could be either. Sometimes we put in a removable sleeve with a heavy duty pole, and we could move it around. That's one way of doing it. Another way is just to put it there and leave it there.
I like the removable sleeve. I just wanted to make sure it wasn't the trailer, because a lot of people just wait for that trailer to go away and go right back to their old habit.
Okay. So I'm trying to help form a consensus here so we can build a motion. So number 1, we would like to install a radar speed feedback sign that records the data for future use in a removable sleeve. Mm-hmm. Okay.
1 down.
1 down. Number 2, identify and construct motorcycle staging areas. That's a big one for me. I want to see our police safe, and I want to see them out there, and I want to see them targeting those guys who are too fast and too loud and cutting through traffic. And so to me, that's huge, and that should be ASAP. Mm-hmm. Is that a general consensus? Yeah. Okay. Number 3 is increase police enforcement. Well, that will happen with number 2. Okay. Right. And number 4, perform.
Well, I had a question about that, though. It's one thing for us to say that we're going to increase traffic enforcement out there. It's another thing for the sheriff's department to do that. And I'm just wondering whether or not there needs to be, and thinking out loud here, additional personnel put on, or whether that's even possible under the circumstances. Because obviously you have many miles of roads to patrol during a watch, and if we're going to put these motorcycle ramps in there, it'd be nice to be able to have some additional people there to do traffic enforcement. And it comes down to a funding issue. I know that.
While we're waiting for
Sorry,
to reply, I would also just like to say that when we say increase police enforcement, we say with council approving the necessary funding to accomplish that. And then now whether or not with all the funding in the world they've got the personnel is another issue.
I knew you'd be able to say that. What I couldn't say.
I fooled you.
The answer to the question. Currently, there are 9 motor officers assigned to the city of Thousand Oaks. These motor officers are assigned to what we call COPE areas, or for the basis of community-based policing. Because of the nature of this area of Lynn Road, it actually encompasses 2 separate COPE areas, and so there are technically 4 motor officers that are assigned to Lynn Road between the area of Hillcrest up to Starfire. With the addition of the senior deputy and myself, that technically makes 6. With the addition of the motorcycle staging areas that we would find to be adequate and allow us safe egress and ingress to Lynn Road, you would see some additional enforcement in areas where we normally do not because of the lack of the motorcycle pads. So would I recommend? I'm always going to recommend that we have more traffic officers. But in reality, I think if we had the motorcycle staging areas and they were deemed safe for the motor officers, that we would be able to increase our enforcement adequately on Lynn Road.
Thank you. Yes. Okay. So, did you have more? Okay. Number 4 was perform engineering traffic survey and reevaluate speed limits. Take into account any and all exceptions per vehicle code following completion of items 1 through 3. And perhaps at that time, we could talk to this city attorney. Is that what you want to do? Or did you want to do the city attorney right away and see?
I would like the commission to consider speaking with the city attorney right away so that we can find out what we're allowed to do and work that into our timeline. And as far as number 4, I think that at some point we're going to need to do that. But I think there are a laundry list of things we need to accomplish first, because I think there's a desired result that we'd like to have. So I would say that delaying as long as we could to perform a traffic survey for the purposes of reevaluating the speed will only help us, not hurt us.
I agree with you completely. So then change traffic signal timing synchronization with the start and end times.
I do have a comment on that because I have a lot more experience than I really need to have with that. We go to a lot of, the company that I work for goes to a lot of different cities, and one of the ways that we mitigate traffic congestion and ease traffic flow is by synchronizing lights so that they allow traffic to flow better and faster. I believe what we should try and do, obviously I'd like to get staff to weigh in on this, is take a look at that situation in reverse. In other words, synchronize the lights so that it makes travel from one end of Lynn to the other actually more inconvenient. In other words, you know, when I went to high school and I first learned how to drive, there was a road back in Cleveland called Lakeshore Boulevard. And we knew that if you made the first light at 38 miles per hour, you could travel 8 miles and never hit another light. Here, if you're going to hit every light, virtually period, I think that will also discourage, as far as you're trying to change people's habits. If you're having someone who may be starting up on the northernmost point of Lynn traveling south, if they're going to hit a lot more lights, they're going to start looking for an alternative route. So my question is, can you synchronize those lights to make it safer? for people. That's
I think that during commuter hours where traffic is already backing up,
it would make it worse.
Cause it more of a problem. So maybe in non-commuter hours that might be workable. But I mean, we could put that in.
Do you have the ability to synchronize them during some hours, and then can you set them, or is it either or?
We can do a lot of traffic timing programs. So if you want, if your recommendation is to desynchronize the lights and make everybody stop certain times of the day, we can do that. Or if you want to have them stop at all the time, we can do that. Sometimes they will go through 2 or 3 signals just because of the way the traffic is flowing and the signal timing is going. So there'll be coincidences like that, but it won't be common.
Well, I'm thinking of the other citizens, the citizens that live in Wildwood that travel down Lynn Road, to go to the 101, or the kids that are going the other way up Lynn Road to go to high school, that we are going to, if we, do this to slow everybody down, we're going to be creating havoc for citizens that live in our city when, it's not everybody that travels down Lynn Road is from Simi Valley and Moore Park. There are citizens from our own city, myself included, that travel down Lynn Road, and I quite, it won't affect me a lot, but if you're coming from Wildwood or a little further up, I think you could, have some pretty angry citizens if they're being punished because people from Simi Valley are using our streets. So, and if we don't want to back up congestion during the main commuting hours, then we are specifically then punishing probably our citizens that live in the town, because that's when they use Lynn Road. And so I can't really get behind the desynchronization of the lights. I just don't see that it serves the purpose that we're looking for, except maybe late at night, when I do know that probably the speeds are nuts on Lynn Road. The teenagers drive too fast. So I certainly, past 9 o'clock at night, I would love, to see lots of red lights, because I don't know for a fact when these accidents happen, but I think a lot of them happen at night. If I remember some of the testimony from last month, they said it was at night that he would jump into his boots and run down onto the street. And so I do think there's incredible speeding on Lynn Road at night. So I could get behind it at night when we're not punishing our own citizens just going about their day.
That sounds good to me.
I would agree with that.
Okay. And then investigate intersection improvements at various uncontrolled intersections. Are there any comments on that?
I would definitely think that Lotus and Lynn deserves a keep clear signage and paint on the street, whatever, to clear that intersection so that people can make a left out of Lotus onto Lynn Road in the morning. They simply, if they're locked in there, they're landlocked, because going down to Camino Manzanas to use the light is not an option with Madrone Elementary School and Redwood. So we can't landlock them in there. I think that we need to remind the people on Lynn Road that they need to keep that intersection clear.
I think it goes back to the enforcement too. That obviously that would be one area that would want to see some more citations issued. And going back to that again, because that's my background, I guess there's got to be a benchmark. I don't know how many tickets are written on Lynn Road in that stretch now, but at some point, once these measures are in place, it would be nice to see whether the numbers have changed, whether we are writing more tickets out there too. So.
We're speaking of the intersection. How does everyone feel about examining a traffic signal at Lotus? That's come up quite a bit. I know the traffic warrants aren't there. I just want to hear some feedback.
Before that, I'm losing a little time on exactly when we discussed it, but it seemed that our last meeting, we talked about Camino Manzanas and the sight distance. Boy, no one's ever needed to hear me louder. That's really interesting. The sight distance, we had talked about a no turn on red during certain hours of the day. right? Or was that at Arbalest? Okay, but I know that distance was a problem. We had pictures where you really couldn't see it at all. And I don't know how many of these intersections, when they talk about controlling where you turn and when you turn, but I'm a believer in that as opposed to a traffic signal, because if you take a signal that exists and enhance the way that it's used, or you limit where you can turn during certain hours of the day, I think that those are certainly traffic calming, if not controlling devices, as long as we don't hang up the people who are our own citizens that are using. I guess what I'm saying is I want to be able to keep our citizens who are using it safe without making their use impossible or too difficult.
I get that. It would seem to me, and it's probably a no-win situation, that a traffic signal at Lotus and Lynn going southbound would be terrific. But northbound, you're coming up over a hill from Manzanas, and I think it scares me that people will be coming over that hill too fast because the speed limit's too high. I would love to think that would be a great way to slow people down, because they wouldn't know coming over that hill whether the light was going to be green or red. But I think we would get into a situation where we would almost have to have a pre-signal to warn people, which I just think we're going to create a nightmare if we, just having driven that over and over and over again, just coming northbound. I just don't see how a signal there could be safer. That's just my opinion.
That's what I wanted to hear. Did you have something? Did you want to mention? Your head.
The ones that drive Lynn Road. This is
Yeah, I do drive Lynn Road occasionally. I would have to say that I'm probably not in favor of a signal there at this point, only because of the things that have already been mentioned. But in addition, I think that you might see some relief from these other measures that we've already discussed. And if after all is said and done and that hasn't happened, then maybe that's something that needs to be revisited.
Okay, well, that solves that. Identify locations for installing countdown pedestrian timers at signals.
I would most definitely think a countdown for the kids at Lynn Road and Manzanas is a due yesterday thing. I mean, those kids, they're always going to, cut it as close as they can. These are middle school kids, for the most part, going to Redwood. And as fast as we could get that countdown clock up for the pedestrians, I think we should do it. There are parents that when I lived close enough, I used to let my kids walk to Redwood. And that is a safety issue that scares me.
Okay. De-designate Lynn Road from municipal code truck routes. Post Lynn Road to prohibit trucks based on weight. Not recommended. My own personal opinion is, even if it weren't for the noise, I know in the report it made it sound like the noise change wouldn't really be noticed, but the vibrations of those big old trucks, I think, are enough to drive me crazy if I lived on Lynn Road. So I think that we need to de-designate it. How do you all feel?
I agree with that. I just want to make certain that two points. I want to make certain that we would move on this as quickly as we possibly can. And if we do need to do some kind of environmental study, do whatever is the most streamlined, easy, and quick study to do. And then second of all, to make it as restrictive as possible, not to ban SUVs and pickup trucks and virtually everything else. Now, you might have to do certain hours so that the hospital can be accessed for the food deliveries and the things that they need. I don't know. I don't know what the details of those restrictions are. But I know that we restrict trash hauling and other things, and so with proper notification, we can probably find a way to restrict when those trucks would access the hospital and it seems to me they can get the COU another way, and I believe that the right designated alternative route should be Moore Park Road. Not so much, I'm not ignoring the fact that there are some homes that back to Moore Park Road, but you already have a problem there. You already have that existing there. It is a main thoroughfare. There's trucks there all the time, and so, trying to centralize these kind of uses, I think is a smarter way to go. So I would support it being as quick as possible and as restrictive as possible. I do believe that even though a report might tell me that the noise isn't going to be reduced that much, I believe that it would be. And I also believe that the vibration virtually gets eliminated. Not a lot of vibration in a pickup truck.
Okay.
I just had a question there. It indicates not recommended by staff. Is that for both of those recommendations, or just the prohibit trucks based on weight? Or was it the entire number 8?
That was just for the entire number 8.
But that was only a recommendation.
Right. No, I know that. I'm in favor of de-designating it, and I know that obviously you're just going to move the problem somewhere else. Hopefully, we'll move it back onto the 23 freeway, although I doubt it while it's remains under construction. But it does seem to me that Moore Park Road doesn't have the same speed problems that exist on Lynn Road, and it's going to cause an impact somewhere, and they're not going to be speeding. The trucks aren't going to be speeding down Moore Park, and at the same time, it'll give relief to those who live on Lynn Road. They won't have to listen to that. So,
okay.
And by the way, I mean Moore Park Road is an established commercial corridor, where Lynn Road should not be.
Okay, who's the lucky person who's going to put this into a motion?
Don't look to me.
Let me ask a question. Obviously, staff has been feverishly writing. So what I would suggest is maybe we can ask Jay Spurgeon to sort of frame what we all just said, and then I'd make that my motion.
I wasn't volunteering for that.
You just had to go to the bathroom? By the way, I want to go on the record of saying that I thought Goulet was great in Camelot.
It's way too late.
I just wanted to ask if you also wanted to consider the recommendation for City Council to direct community development about the wall height variance that wasn't part of your just recent discussion here.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That and then
add that as a number 9.
That's number 9, and then also look into the concrete curb protection. Where the rolled curb is. Look into putting some kind of barricade there, a nice, pretty one, but something that will stop the cars from hitting pedestrians.
So I would put those 10 items, because that's where we're at now, is 10 items in the form of an appropriate motion, with the overriding theme to be as soon as possible, and in some cases as soon as practical. And the last part of the motion would be to, as soon as possible, have staff come back with a reasonably aggressive timetable that, once approved by council, we can live with and check benchmarks, so that the citizens that live in that area can say, my calendar circled on thus and such a date, things should be in place.
Okay, I'm actually willing to run this down as a motion because we did change a couple of things, and I'm open to friendly help here. So our motion and recommendation to council would be number 1, to install radar speed feedback signs that record the data on both sides of Lynn Road at select locations, of the portable variety on the sleeve, if possible. Number 2, to identify and construct motorcycle staging areas so that we can, in fact, increase police enforcement which is item number 3, which is after we've gone to the trouble of putting these concrete pads that we do increase police enforcement and provide for the extra funding for personnel if necessary. Number 4, that at some point we will reevaluate the speed limits, taking into account exceptions, and hope that the calming measures have brought the speed limits down, but that we do that at a optimal time to get the results we're looking for. Number 5, that we do not change traffic signal synchronization timing, except after, I want to say after 9 or 10 p.m., put a time on it, after 10 p.m. until 5 a.m. No, later?
Well, I was looking more at 9 p.m. only because most of the things are wrapped up at a school by that time. We're not really inconveniencing a lot of people, and I think that a lot of teenagers are out at 9 o'clock at night.
I would agree with that. I think the earlier side is certainly better.
Okay, we'll stick with 9 p.m. to 5 a.m. Number 6, clear signs and paint on the street to keep clear at Lotus and Lynn to help with the gridlock. Number 7, to put countdown pedestrian timers at Manzanas and Lynn as soon as possible. Number 8, to de-designate Lynn Road from municipal code truck routes. Number 9 is to ask council to direct planning to look at variances for homeowners to install sound walls at a higher than higher than normal height. And number 10, to look at installing curbs or other protection devices for pedestrians walking on the sidewalks of Lynn Road.
Very well done.
So I guess I will officially second that as opposed to making it. Can I also ask one question of staff? If I'm remembering correctly, there are, I believe it's a money benchmark of what we're allowed to decide. 20 grand. And here's my question about the 20 grand. Is it an aggregate? Or, for example, can we, without having to go through the time of council, say we'd like item number 1, one of those is under 20 grand. Any additional ones will get approved through council. In other words, is there anything that we can individually pull out here? Is it 20,000 per occurrence, or is it 20,000 aggregate? Like, for example, can we say, by the way, in addition, we'd like to have 4 pedestrian timers put in? How many things can we accomplish tonight, or does the whole package have to go back to council? And then how quickly can we force it to get on council's agenda?
Let me start on that. The direction from City Council originally for this ad hoc committee was for the committee to meet, come up with recommendations that would go back to City Council. I think the package has to go as a whole back to City Council. I think that would be appropriate. I can tell you that some of these items we can move ahead with right away just because they're within our kind of normal purview, and I don't think we're short-circuiting the process by doing that. For instance, countdown timers at Manzanas. We already have a project underway, and those we know that's an area we're targeting, and they are already on the list, and our contractor may be in the process now, or I don't even know if they may already be there, but if not, they're going to be there. They should be there soon. So I think the answer in general is that this whole package needs to go back. You know, putting the keep clear in the intersection markings. I mean, that's the kind of thing we can order through a work order. So there's a few things like that are fairly straightforward. And John, go ahead.
Okay, if we're off of that topic, can we go back to number 10 about the pedestrian safety barrier? Well, what did you have in mind? Along the entire length of Lynn Road on both sides?
No,
Or
I think
where would
specifically
this be?
at where they said at Madronia Elementary, where it goes from kind of wider and then it narrows at the play field of Madronia Elementary on Lynn Road. It's from that point down to, I think they said Gainsborough is just kind of a rolled curb. And, you know, the road narrows, and I would think specifically right there where the road narrows, we might want to consider, you know, some sort of block of the sidewalk. But I think just a better curb from that point down to Gainsborough might be the first thing we want to at least look at the cost of. I think the hope was they wanted people to stop driving through their walls because they're so expensive to repair. But that's further south of Gainsborough, because like I said, there's a horse trail between until you get to Gainsborough. Then you have walls that actually go into people's backyards. So I think they were looking for some protection there, that if there were posts, you know, maybe the cars would drive into the posts as opposed to into their walls. I don't know whether we can solve that or not. Or like the other commissioner said, do we want to solve it? You know, if they drive into cement posts, then other cars drive into them, and have we created a bigger problem? But I do think that where the rolled curb is behind the play yard, a sufficient regular squared off curb might make it a little bit safer. And I think that's what they were asking for and that we were responding to. Is that how you see it, Commissioner, Chairperson?
I did not have anything real specific in mind. I just wanted the experts to look at that and see what they felt was best in those situations. Did you have?
Yeah, I was more referring to the posts down by the block walls, the residence block walls. I wasn't addressing the sidewalks up there near the school. Although I do recall that it was brought up by one speaker, and I guess my recommendation would be that we at least take a look at that as something that we might want to consider later. As I sit here now, I can't actually picture what that looks like, so I guess I can't necessarily join in that.
Yeah, I think our motion is to have you look at it and come back to us with, you know, I can picture it because I drive it every day, but I don't know what the right answer is. And so I think what our motion is for you to look at that and come back to us with some ideas.
Okay. Commissioner Lemo?
Just one quick comment, because I know that in the process of voting, as soon as the vote's done, people sort of book it out of the room. For the people who stayed here tonight, absolutely, positively get the phone tree going. Because if you have the same showing that you had tonight, when this comes in front of City Council, it will make it very easy for Council to make a decision. But I think you really need to show up in the same way that you showed up tonight.
Okay. I think it's probably time for the vote. Mrs. Bravo, time for a vote?
She's watching the 11 o'clock news.
Chair McMahon,
Yes.
Commissioner Lemo,
Yes.
Commissioner McKay,
Yes.
Commissioner Price.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0.
Thank you. I know it wasn't entirely what you wanted. We're trying to do the best we can under the circumstances. We do appreciate your concerns. We feel horrible about what you're living through, and we want to do the best we can for all the citizens of the city. So thank you for your participation and for your enthusiasm and your passion. We really do appreciate it. Item number 8, status report of prior Traffic Commission recommendations. There are none. Item number 9, Traffic Commission comments.
We did make a motion last time that we did the no turn on red, and then they're putting in a light at Wildwood, which is adding a light to Lynn Road. Isn't that correct? Do you know when is that happening soon? Did it already happen and I missed it? I don't go up there very often.
Early spring.
Okay. So we are at least adding one light.
Okay. Commissioner?
More of a question than a comment, I guess sort of trailing off on the last issue. How soon will we be able to find out when this will get presented to council? And will we all have a chance to just kind of review it because it was so long and make certain that it's right on point with what we wanted to get across to council?
Well,
I thought we had made a decision about 2 meetings ago that was the accepted process, and I was just reminding us of that.
if we bring back to you somehow what we think you're saying, we might have to do another meeting, and I don't think you want to do that.
No.
So we're going to take your recommendation as we know it and take it on to city council as soon as we can, and probably won't be until January. Right?
Yeah, I think what he was,
Mid-January,
is this something that staff, I know that you don't like number 8 and that we went against a recommendation on number 8, but I think what we had discussed 2 meetings ago was, is it too difficult for staff to recommend something that they are opposed to? Does this motion feel that way to you, that we should send a representative to that council meeting to present our motion, or are you comfortable with it?
We'll present your recommendation, and then we'll present our recommendation.
Okay, then in light of
There'll
that,
be two recommendations.
Yeah.
And the committee's recommendation.
Yeah,
for that.
I think then in light of that, based upon what we discussed at the last meeting, whatever, if you could notify us so that whatever membership we have can actually go down and speak at council as well. Thanks.
Thank you. Traffic Commission comments? Are we done with those?
I guess the only thing I would like to say is, since it's my first meeting, I'm thrilled to be part of this commission, and I look forward to serving the community and hopefully doing some things that are going to make a difference and that will please some of you. So maybe not all, but some at least.
Well, thank you.
Thank
We're
you.
glad you're with us. It's going to be nice. Item number 10, work program and commission schedule. We do have that report. Do we have a motion about our December 15th meeting?
I move to cancel our December 15th meeting.
Second.
Mrs. Bravo, did you have something to say?
That was a typo. It should have been the 20th.
Oh,
I move to cancel our December meeting.
I agree.
I think we can take a hand vote on that because it's administrative. All those in favor?
Motion carries.
Thank you. Item 11, engineers' comments. No comments. In that case, thank you very much, everybody. This was a great meeting, I think. We will adjourn to 7:30 p.m. Wednesday, January 17th, 2007 in the boardroom of the Civic Arts Plaza on the 3rd floor. Everyone have a nice holiday.